You're welcome. You are now live. Thank you.
Terrific. At 1:06, we will call the second day of our budget hearings to order. It is April 13th, 2022. And if we could get a roll call vote, please.
Councilor Romero.
Did you say Rivera?
No, Villarreal.
Oh,
I heard Councillor Lindell, so Councillor Villarreal is present.
Thank you. Councilor Rivera,
present.
Councilor Cassett,
Here.
Councilor Lindell,
Yes.
and Councilor Romero Worth.
I am here.
Thank you.
I think all the members of the committee are here. So we go to approval of the agenda. Do we have any changes, Director McCoy?
No changes, Madam Chair.
All right, could we get a motion to approve the agenda?
Move to approve.
Second,
We have a motion and a second for approval of the agenda. Can we get a roll call, please?
Yes. Councilor Villarreal,
yes.
Councilor Rivera,
Yes.
Councilor Cassett,
Yes.
Councilor Lindell,
Yes.
and Councilor Romero Worth.
Yes. Terrific. All right, this is, as I said, this is the second day. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different budgets to go through. And again, my job here is to try to keep us on track, keep us on time, and appreciate everybody being here, appreciate the work of Mary and her team and of this committee to going through and helping us understand what's in this budget. And I want to welcome our city clerk and her team, as they are the first budget up, community engagement. And I don't know, Director McCoy, if you're, how do we do this?
Yes, Madam Chair, committee members, we will be sharing the PowerPoint presentation, and Director Mahilsek will be walking us through her proposed FY23 budgets. Very similar to the structure we had yesterday with Director Jones.
Great. So welcome, and I'll just turn it over to you.
Perfect. I don't know who will, oh, there we go. I always wanted to be the one that says next slide, please. So here we go. I don't know. Lawrence, are you handling the budget presentation slide deck?
I have it, Christine. This is Brad.
Okay, hey Brad. So yes, if you want to hop over to slide 2, I'll just do a very quick overview. For our department, I want to note that as the community engagement department, that is also, it's a combination of the city clerk's office, the community engagement division, and it also includes the public defender. The clerk's office, as you know, really focuses on the retention of records, meetings, agendas, minutes. It also includes the mailroom and duplicating. Community engagement is constituent services, special events, communication, as well as the council liaison position. And as you'll see in the budget proposal, some additional positions that we're requesting for added support as we move forward in this next year. And then of course, the public defender, which provides our professional legal services to indigent residents within our community that are charged with crimes in the city of Santa Fe. So that's a very quick overview. And Andy, or I'm sorry, Brad, I think you're the one with the, yes. So these are just some high level budget increases. I think, to be honest, we want to hop to the next slide that really goes into detail for each individual section, which again, through the clerk's office, some of the highlights of things that we're looking for are an increase in, well, you know what, Brad, I think this is actually, well, I'll work through with some additional language, but not the latest version. So the clerk's office is requesting additional funding for our records retention, and that is in compliance, to come into compliance to review the policy for some of our records retention. Sorry, I'm looking at different notes. So I'm just gonna swap to my own notes really fast for this. So again, the $50,000 is for the city record retention policy to process additional records requests and then to assist with retention backlog. I think, as I've mentioned in previous governing body meetings, it's something that our department's been focusing on that there hadn't been a focus to previously. As an example, we have processed 2016, 17, 18 bills, ordinances, and resolutions, as well as 2019, 2020, and 21 governing body minute meetings in the most recent years. And of course, we're working on processing some of our additional committee meetings. We're also requesting capacity and financing to build out a platform for online campaign finance reporting. This has been a desire to bring us into compliance, not into compliance, excuse me, but into the modern world of politics. This will, I think, in many ways really help anyone seeking public campaign financing. It'll allow us an opportunity to get those $5 donations online, and then this will also allow everybody to immediately upload their reports and receipts for their campaign reporting. So I think this is really a huge step forward for us in the clerk's office as it relates to public campaign financing and reporting. We're very excited about that. Another piece that we're requesting is $75,000 to implement the language accessibility study recommendations. This is a study that our office is currently overseeing, and this is very exciting. The language accessibility study is actually doing an evaluation of existing language services for the city of Santa Fe, as well as reviewing what services are provided in similar sized communities. They're going to review our bilingual pay incentive, which is currently only offered to AFSCME, and we're looking at what that'll look like across the board as well, and then create a final language access plan for us. So this funding is actually a continuation of that language accessibility study and will allow us to implement some of the recommendations, as well as standardize the areas that we currently the areas in priority in which documents are translated, as well as meetings for interpretation. And then standard maintenance for our copy machines, which of course run everything from our senior newsletters to mailers and even our some of our pay stubs. And then lastly, I think on this slide is funding for Ecrb. Currently, I'm working with our attorney's office. We're completely rewriting we're doing a code rewrite and review based on the last election to help bring us closer in line with the Local Election Act, as well as reviewing our Ecrb section, the complaint process, and some of our public campaign financing. So this really helps with that. And of course, during the election year, when we have complaints against current governing body members, this attorney also assists with that. So Brad, you want to go to the next slide? Next slide. All right. And then this is the community engagement section. Some of the overviews that I want to highlight is the web content manager position. This is really exciting. We've been working on a new website for a little while now. It was a goal of the mayor, I think, at the last, in his first term. It was a project that I took on when I became the director for community engagement along with the clerk's office. And so we're hoping for a launch actually in June of our new website. This content manager position would create the consistency across the board for the website. It would allow the content to remain consistent, and it would also allow us to make modifications immediately to the website, as well as really use this as the tool that it is. Websites for most organizations are considered their most powerful communication tool. I don't feel that's the case with our current website, but we're getting there, and we'll launch our new website. We're also looking to create a new community engagement specialist position. Again, this is building off work that we're doing in this current fiscal year. Right now, we're actually doing a community engagement guide. We've solicited Luz del Sol LLC. Many of you know that more commonly as Marisol Atkins. She's actually creating a guide for us. It'll be a standard template on how the city of Santa Fe engages and does engagement across the entire city, so that we don't have variation from department to department. And then the guide will also help us define our engagement purpose, our achievable goals, and then set a clear strategy for successful community engagement across the board. So again, this position will really be tasked with implementing and overseeing the communication strategies across, or excuse me, the community engagement strategies across the entire city. We're retooling, or we've requested a position for a volunteer coordinator position. This is something that we've seen drastically increase in recent months and even years. This position really would help our organization with internal business and ad capacity. We have a ton of residents who love community service, who want to help the city of Santa Fe. They like, think of the Buddy Royballs of the world, who are amazing, but we actually are looking for a position that would help coordinate them with a variety of volunteer programs that we have across the city. So whether that be working with Jesse for parks cleanups or with senior services on some of our senior volunteer programs, this really goes to, I think, an overall effort and tone in the entire city, which is a lot of residents, businesses, organizations are interested in volunteering and being connected to volunteer opportunities. So that kind of walks through. I do want to note on this, there was a reclassification of a vacant liaison position that I think was inadvertently included in this. As most of you know, I've been working with you to actually post that position and solicit feedback. So that is not the intent of this position. The full intent is to get the council additional support and refill the council liaison position. I'm working through the feedback that current councilor members have provided about this position. So I do want to note that, and I probably should have started with that, to be honest. But I do want to make that note that we absolutely are looking to get additional assistance to city council members. And I actually greatly appreciate the feedback that I've received so far for that position. And then just moving on through the rest of the budget, I think requests, it's been great working on chart. I think that the intent is to continue the work that we've done into the next fiscal year. We've asked for additional funding for special events and advertising for those special events. Again, as the city, I think most of you were at the Easter egg hunt on Saturday. It was probably the best attended event we've maybe ever had outside of the plaza lighting. And it was one of a series of 25 events that will have been hosted in this year. So really all of that is to accommodate movies in the park. We're going to bring back the fishing derby, Easter egg hunt, plaza lighting, and that's not only for programming, but also for advertising of special events. We, of course, try to work with our local organizations to spread the word, as well as putting out our own advertisement, either on social media or in local media distributions. I do want to note on this next one, we put in $50,000 to clean up blighted and nuisance properties in Santa Fe. I will note, and I'm very proud of the fact that this past fiscal year, we have done something that we've never done in the city of Santa Fe. We have cleaned and leaned almost leaned a second property, but definitely one. We had one off of Agua Fria. It was a property that we went in and cleaned up and found funding for, and then placed a lien on the property. And we also adjusted it with property that you all may have seen in the newspaper, which was 3003 Calle Caballero. So this is something we plan on doing moving forward. I, again, couldn't be more proud of the fact that this is a brand new approach we've taken as part of the redevelopment that many of the councilors worked on through the nuisance property, and giving us a bit more teeth, I think, is what we lovingly say about that ordinance. It gave us teeth to do these types of things. So there's additional funding in there for that, as well as additional direct informational advertisement to residents. So we are moving forward with a lot of social media advertising, and then also growing our own distributions for residents and getting information out, not only about events, but also about city business in general, programs, and also compliance issues. And then 13,000 to continue our Happy or Not programming, which again solicits public feedback about city services at many locations across the city of Santa Fe. And many managers, directors, and facilities use that feedback in their daily operations, including the GCC, libraries, airport, and rec centers. So that's kind of a quick overview of that. And then I'm sure I spoke way too fast and covered many things, but I'm not sure if at that point, that is in large part a high level overview of some of the things I've requested in our budget. And I don't know that we specifically had a slide calling out our public defender, but I do just want to note any additional funding that we receive for that. We average about 500 cases per year. So I think anything that was in for our public defender is really just to cover any conflicts of cases or any time that our public defender is not available. And Councilwoman, I'm not sure if there's anything else. I think just a quick add on to some of the things I've mentioned and requests that were either status quo in our budget. The shopping carts is something that I think we've seen great success on. It was an area we were creative with finding funding this fiscal year and launched a pilot project based off of constituent requests and CRM numbers. We've seen great use of our shopping cart contract and picking up shopping carts on the street. That's just one example of an item in our budget that we're including in this next fiscal year. So I think if that's probably the high levels.
Can we stop sharing screen for just a second? And I notice you have two members of your team. Maybe you just want to introduce them since they are here, and just so everybody has a chance to know who they are and what they do.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. Thank you, Councilor Romero Worth. We have Isabella Sharp on with us. Isabella is the administrative manager for our department. She oversees every penny that we spend and facilitates all of our contracts, all of our purchase orders, recs. She oversees the budget for every division in our department or every section. So that again includes communications, special events, mailroom, duplicating, records retention. Izzy really is essential in every way to the functionality of our department. She also processes all of our PAs, HR requests, and so forth. And then we have Miss Geraldine Cardenas. She's our assistant city clerk. Geraldine is definitely essential in all of our meetings, agendas, packet materials. Geraldine also oversees our committee appointments and just really definitely our clerk knowledge. So Gee, I don't know if either of you want to say hello as well or add on to your introductions, but both are essential in the development of our office and everything we do kind of moving forward.
Great, welcome. And sounds like it's going to be a busy year if this budget is approved, and also it's, continuing a lot of busyness, I would say, that happens from your office. I think if you're ready, we'll go to questions from the committee with regard to this budget.
Absolutely.
Councilwoman Lindell.
Do I have a raised hand? I know I was muted. Okay, I just have a few questions, Christine. Thank you very much for the presentation. Thank you for clarifying that we are still keeping our council liaison position, because I wouldn't want to be the person to deliver the news that that was going away. That would be sad. So going down the list, on the $60,000 to build out a platform for the online campaign finance reporting and ability to receive public campaign finance contributions online, those are probably good things, but I think that we'll have to have some discussions with the council on that, in terms of, we probably need some clarification and work on an ordinance before we just go forward with that. Is that kind of what you had in mind also?
Chair Romero Worth, Councilor Lindell, it is, we are working through updates to the city code right now. However, I do want to note that there was a ordinance change that the governing body approved in this last year that also modified language to clarify that electronic payments could be used. And during that discussion, this was one of the things that was discussed, was the desire to have electronic and online capabilities. So this is in part direction from that ordinance and discussion, both from the ECRB as well as governing body. But you are correct, there are still other areas in the campaign code that we will, there are other minor language modifications that would help clarify the intent.
Okay, thank you. On the $125,000 to continue the work on chart, I thought that chart was not in your shop anymore.
You are correct. The finances for chart, I'm sorry, Chair Romero Worth, Councilor Lindell, the finances for chart are still in my department. $25,000 of that request is actually to accommodate the last payment, as the resolution extended the chart process 1 month, approximately 1 month outside of this fiscal year. I'm sorry, 2 months. It extended it until August. And so $25,000 of that is to accommodate the extension of the resolution and the contract timeframe. It's not, and then the additional funding, and I may tag in another individual that would have additional information, but I think the desire was to continue outreach and any additional resources for the chart process to continue. I don't know, John, if you have additional information that you'd like to share on that, or Director McCoy.
Director McCoy, if you could speak to that, about why the money's placed there.
Of course, Mr. Blair. Chair Romero Worth, Councilor Lindell, the funding was placed in the current fiscal year, a little over 300,000, about 326, I believe, thousand in the city clerk's budget because of the funding source. The funding source is general fund, and there is no general fund in the arts and culture department budget. So we are maintaining the additional 25,000 for the 2 months to continue and finish the chart process in the city clerk's budget into fiscal year 23. Additionally, after that, there may be some follow-up from the chart process to continue this very important dialogue with our community, and that is the $100,000 allocation for the remainder of the year. At this point, the $100,000 is to be used for any outcomes of the chart process through that August timeframe that Director Mihalcek referenced earlier. So at that point, when the chart process is completed, we will be able to continue this very important work. And I see the city manager has his hand up and may want to add on.
Thank you,
City
Director
Manager
McCoy.
Blair, yeah.
Chair Romero Worth, Councilor Lindell, thank you for the question. The only thing I would add to what Director McCoy said is that the way that we view this chart process, it's not intended to be wrapped up in any way, shape, or form in August. This is the beginning of the process of how we continue working forward as a community. And so the purpose of the appropriation, the continuation of this going forward is that we are still working through a lot of the issues that have made Santa Fe what they are today and how to make sure that we're a better community and a more united community moving forward.
Thank you. The next item is a small item. It's the $15,500 for standard maintenance for copy machines. I thought we just approved a contract through IT to do everything that had to do with copy machines in the whole city.
You are correct. You did. Our copy machines are not on that agreement because our copy machines are considered commercial machines. So the agreement through IT is for the copiers that are in individual offices or departments. They're not the commercial level ones that are done through the mailroom. We actually also will be looking at modifying I'm working with Regina on some additional funding because our commercial machines are actually outside of their life. And so this is a small amount to maintenance them, but we do need to look probably to GRT funding for new copy machines because we are currently outside of our life cycle, and we do print everything from the senior newsletters, which I also am just going to take a quick moment to note that since I became the city clerk, we started printing the covers of the senior newsletters in color, and a very small but impactful. We've received so many compliments from our seniors about that small upgrade. So it is something that we actually are really proud of. But anyways, everything from the senior newsletters to our mailers for fire prevention, everything. And we're actually looking at bringing our business cards in-house as well. And we're going to be rolling out some additional services that the mailroom printing services, kind of internal Kinkos is the way we're going to think about it moving forward. So we're really excited about that, from brochures to inserts. And again, we'll be seeking some GRT funding for that. And I'm working with Regina to get those machines replaced, the commercial level machines. So Councilor Lindell, I hope that helped clarify, but if it did not, please let me know. I'm happy to give additional information.
No, it did. And just as a side comment, I think that the folks that work in mail and copying do a terrific job. And I'm sure that any of those projects they could handle and do a great job on. So I hope that does happen. So thank you, City Clerk. Thank you, Chair. And that is all the questions that I had for clarification on this budget.
Thank you so much. Chair Romero Worth, if I could, I just would like to thank Councilor Lindell for her comments about our mailroom. I greatly appreciate anytime our staff is commended, but they do work very hard, and actually we're very excited to expand services in mailroom and duplicating their really excited about business cards actually as well. So thank you again for that.
Yeah, that's kind of the center of almost any organization is the people that do that work. So very grateful. Councilwoman Villarreal.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you to the community engagement team and all the things that you juggle, even the stuff we don't see in meetings and stuff behind the scenes. I appreciate it. I have a lot of questions, and they're not personal. They're really just trying to understand some of these changes that are new to us that we haven't heard about, and just to get clarity, and then just some of the kind of thought process that you all went through to get to this point to make some of these requests. So I think one thing you did clarify for me was the Spanish language translation. I couldn't figure out why we keep calling it that, because we already had the funding source, but you called it language accessibility, and it covers a lot of different areas. I'm really happy to see and hear about that. I've been talking about that since I first started on council, and so it's great to see it moving forward. And then the campaign finance reporting, building out that platform, I think that's really important. I'm excited we're moving in that direction. And I'm just curious if you think 60,000 is actually enough, and if you've reached out to Albuquerque to see what that looked like for them, because I felt like it was a pretty massive undertaking that was pretty pricey to get the, basics down, to get the platform and then moving it forward. So maybe you could speak a little bit more about that.
Yes, absolutely. Great question. Councilor, Chair Romero Worth, Councilwoman Villarreal. Yes, actually, that figure was based off of our meetings with the city of Albuquerque, and ironically, we have another meeting with them tomorrow to go through this. But that amount was based on their current contract amount, and we're hopeful that that will be sufficient based on their offerings. We also don't have usually the number of candidates, so we made some modifications as well to that, but we plan on working with a contractor as soon as the fiscal year starts, so that we all are well versed in this and have a substantial amount of time to basically practice, test drive, do all of the things before we move into the next election cycle. So yes, it's something I'm very excited about. I believe I mentioned this last year. It was something we tried to implement, but just ran up against some time constraints with last year's election. So this is the highest project on our list of goals to accomplish in the city clerk's office. Online reporting sits in the #1 spot for us. So
great. And just to clarify that piece that was 10,000 to advise, is that like legal advice for the city's clerk's office and ECRB regarding any complaints related to the races in which sitting governing body members are candidates? That was confusing to me. Can you say more about what the 10,000 is for?
Yes. So the $10,000 does cover an attorney for the city clerk's office, and that is, again, when we're dealing with ECRB review or review of legislation, and then anything, it's mostly, and then again, as you mentioned, it's also for when we do have ethics complaints, and they are included current governing body members, are included in those complaints. We do have outside counsel that reviews on those, reviews those complaints, and then works with our ECRB as well. And I don't know, and our attorney just popped on and raised her hand. So Attorney McSherry might want to add to that.
Chair Romero Worth, if I can just add in a little bit.
Sure.
So we found a need for this year because we wanted to avoid any sort of allegations of a conflict for me advising the board or one of my direct reports when there was a complaint against someone who I am currently advising in your capacity as either a member of the governing body or the mayor. So we ended up hiring a retired former county attorney to provide some legal advice on those types of matters. So it was pretty narrow in scope. Anything that involved a race that did not have a sitting councilor or mayor involved in it, my office still provided advice on that type of a matter. But we thought it was probably a good practice to continue in the future. I think this year my office did fund it, but we just went ahead and I think put it in the city clerk's, or we transferred the funding to the city clerk this year in order to do it from our contract council budget.
Got it. Okay, thank you for that clarification. So if you could tell us more about this web content manager, what the funding is for this position. I actually thought we had somebody already doing this role or had this role, a staff person that oversees our website. And is it more technical in nature? And then additionally, if this is asking for a web content manager, then why are we needing the 25,000 in contracts to support the website if we have somebody in-house doing it?
Chair Romero-Worth, Councilwoman Villarreal, excellent questions. Thank you for the opportunity to clarify. So we do have an individual right now in the IT department that is helping us with some technical support to the website. However, that will not continue once the new website is launched because we are rebuilding an entire new website and again, job duties. In the city of Santa Fe tend to be doing multiple things. And so this position's focus is going to be on updating the website and actually ensuring as part of their regular job duties that the content on the website is accurate, working with each department on a regular basis to ensure that content information is placed and removed in a timely manner. One of the biggest issues that we've run into while we were redoing the city website is there's hundreds of users that go in and update their website or add sentences. So we find errors not only in the language, in the style, grammatical, but also our website doesn't look consistent. Everybody does something different. There's not a consistent format across the board, and it's often left to departments. So as a great example, I update most of the city website, including sections on news and announcements, updates to any section within the clerk's office. And so this position actually would take on that responsibility for the entire city. And that's why we'd have a designated person. The additional funding for the $25,000 is actually for hosting and maintenance. So if there's some technical issue that comes through that we are unable to address, although there is going to be a handful of members from our team, there's going to be, we're calling them 5 power users that would be able to back up this web content developer in case they were out or if we needed something on a priority basis. But if there's something outside of what we're able to do with our training and capacity, that would be covered in our maintenance contract. If there's any upgrades that needed to be done, either because of technology or programming, that would be covered. And then of course, the hosting and maintenance, that's a monthly cost. We pay that now on our current website. So that's just something that we're including in our budget as well moving forward.
Thank you for the details on that. Let's see. So this community engagement specialist, we had this budgeted a while ago. And I think that got moved over to the city manager. So I'm curious how the community engagement specialist position is different than what we currently have as the neighbor engagement coordinator, and how their jobs will be different or similar, because I think what they're basically covering a lot of the same areas. So I want to understand why we need a community engagement specialist when we have a neighborhood engagement coordinator.
Sure, Chair Romero-Worth, Councilwoman Villarreal, I will start that. This is a new request for the community engagement specialist. And really the desire of this position and the need for it was born out of the last year or even previous years specific to community engagement. And so I think, as I mentioned, probably too fast while I was talking in our overview, we are working with Luz del Sol right now to create an actual community engagement template. And this position would really be focused on that. And what we find is great variation from department and project to project. So for example, Midtown's community engagement, while we did hire a consultant to help navigate that, the scope was far outside of and different from what we did for, say, streetlight projects or community engagement for park improvements. It's different from the community engagement for facility requests. And so that is one of the things that we're actually working to standardize is to have a template and a guide that we would be able to utilize for a variety of projects across the city, and especially moving forward. We don't currently have that capacity, so we do rely on outside contractors to bring that specialty. And this position actually would be able to have a guide that was developed with a consultant to navigate some of our community engagement. And I've probably said this before, but we use it a little bit as a catchphrase, community engagement and transparency. Sometimes, no offense, John, are words that we use. And we want to make sure that the intent and integrity of our community engagement is really vested in defining our engagement process, and then maintaining achievable goals, and also setting really expectations for our engagement. And I can go on with additional examples, but I think those are some of the core ones that we talk about. If we want to have meaningful engagement for our budget or for community needs in certain areas, that's really what the focus of this position is. And really it's basically implementing the guide that we're currently working on for this community engagement document. I'm happy to go into additional.
Yeah, I hear you, Christine. I see where we want to go. And I think we've learned that the city is not, we're in a power position where I think we are served better when we follow the lead of community partners. And that's why the Midtown property or the Midtown engagement worked well, that second iteration, because we actually work with community partners that have connections to community members and have already built trust. And so I guess I'm just not in favor of this position. I feel like it's duplicating what we already have. And then I guess the piece I think we're missing across the board always, and we've never even considered it, although I've talked about the need, is having a person in this role, whether it's a specialist or we actually have a department, but around diversity and equity. And that's a term we can use, however, I just want to model it over like how the city of Albuquerque is doing, and we're not even close to being there. So if you were to say this was a position that was a diversity and equity specialist, then I would be more in favor of that. So just making a point that I think we're adding something that we're best suited to work with community members on. And then the other question I have is around the volunteer coordinator. Have you gotten that many requests for volunteering that we need a person, and this is a full-time position?
Yes, Councilor Romero Worth and Councilwoman Villarreal, if I may, I would love to just add a quick content to the previous position before we move on. And one is, we are working with a community partner, and part of the guide is actually also how we engage our community partners for our community engagement. So I do just want to note, we don't anticipate that this is the end all be all, but really the first step in developing a more complex engagement process and really building out some of our relationships. As you mentioned, we have great partners and we don't necessarily know how to engage them, I think, in the best ways. I'll say that. And I do want to note that we do have a lens, and it was actually in the scope to make sure that we include both diversity and equity as part of the review to make sure. And again, I really believe that our language accessibility study and our community engagement study, they have a lot of cross ties. And I hear you, we're not quite at the city of Albuquerque level, but I really am committed to listening to what I've heard over the last several years, both from our community partners, departments, and of course our governing body members, to make sure that we are more inclusive and that we start taking these proper steps to get us where we want to be.
So
City Manager Blair,
again?
so
the
the
community
city
engagement
manager,
specialist?
the city manager has his hand up. Did you want to comment on this?
Yes, ma'am. Sorry to
Would that
interrupt.
be okay? Would that be okay, Councilwoman?
I just wanted to know before we leave this, is the amount for this community engagement specialist, what's the funding amount for that?
Sorry, let me pull my, Director McCoy might get to it faster, but I believe it's $25 an hour was the budgeted amount. in the position?
You requested 25 an hour.
Thank you, Isabella.
Councilor Romero Worth, Councilor Villarreal, nice to see you. I just want to flag real quick, we're going to be better than the city of Albuquerque. Okay. And I think Councilor Villarreal, as a result of the conversation and the input that you gave us when we looked at the job application for the deputy city manager, I went ahead and actually modified the job description or some of the qualifications to include that the person have experience in dealing with diverse communities and sort of trying to begin that process. We are going to have the new deputy city manager when that person begins. One of the assignments will be about drafting a diversity, equity, and inclusion program or a plan for the city broadly, working with HR and their team on that primarily. And then I think I won't be speaking out of turn when I say HR Director Bernadette Salazar and myself have had conversations about, as we begin the process of updating the job descriptions that we share for positions within the city of Santa Fe, making sure that these sort of concerns are included and mandated as part of the people that we're bringing on to be part of the city. So I just wanted, while we were talking about it, wanted to flag the responsiveness of us trying to make sure that we're heading in the direction that I think we agree we should be. Thank you.
Thank you for that additional information. And the city of Albuquerque is way ahead of us. They actually have an Office of Equity and Inclusion, and they actually have staff. So that's something to work towards for sure. I'll move on about the coordinator. Volunteer, you're saying.
Councilwoman, we have Director McCoy's hand up, I believe, to weigh in on this. And Mr. Blair, if you'll take your hand down, thank you.
Madam Chair, Councilor Villarreal, I just wanted to answer your question. A total of 71,000 for salaries and benefits is allocated to creating this new position.
For the community engagement specialist?
Correct.
If you can also look for the web content manager funding also.
Madam Chair.
Go ahead.
Madam Chair, Councilor, I had anticipated that question as well. A total of almost 85,000 is included in this budget to create the website content developer position.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to the reclassification of the council liaison position. So we had 2 council liaison positions. One's moving forward as more policy, and this one was reclassified to committee liaison. So the reclassification.
Wait, Councilwoman, just to clarify before we go down there, I believe that Ms. Mihelsek said that's an error in the book. We are not reclassifying that position. It's staying as a council liaison.
Okay, but there is you all have been talking about a community liaison position. So is that not happening?
Correct. At this time, the committee liaison position is not a position that was identified for one to bring forward in the budget. But as Chair Romero Worth mentioned, the intent is to fill the council liaison position and work to add additional capacity for committees and council committees moving forward in a different way.
Gotcha. Thank you. But we did actually have 2 council liaison positions at one time. So I'm curious where the other one went.
So the other one was the policy analyst. That was also based on feedback from the council to have a dedicated position to policy. So that position, I believe, all governing body member, or excuse me, not all governing body members, all city council members were asked to provide feedback on that position. That was given to Attorney McSherry and incorporated. And I don't know if she's still available, but I believe that position is posted or will be posted soon. Attorney McSherry, I didn't mean to call you back on.
Madam Chair, Councilwoman Villarreal, I believe that HR is wrapping up its evaluation of what pay band that position would fall into. And as soon as we have that information, I will post it. That's correct. It's the policy analyst position.
Okay. And then the other one is council liaison that you just sent us, Christine, the job description, right? Okay. Just making sure the titles, I have them correct. Okay. Then can you tell us what the happy, not happy program is?
Yeah, absolutely. It's actually, this is a continuation of a program we already have. So we have kiosks located in a variety of buildings, city facilities, and they essentially collect quick information. You've probably seen them when you go into City Hall or GCC, any of our libraries, the airport. They have kind of, it's like an iPad almost mounted on a stand, and there's 4 faces. They range from a green smiley face to a red not so happy face, and you can click on them for your feedback, how your interaction experience was at that location. And then there's an option for additional feedback. So if you, depending on what you select, there's follow-up questions. It's a quick interaction survey, but we actually use them to work with our departments for any issues or errors that we see coming up. And also when we receive great feedback, it's actually amazing the amount of compliments we receive through those kiosks and share with department directors. We generate weekly reports actually for each location, and they're sent directly to myself, our constituent services team, and then depending on the location of the kiosk, they're sent to that manager, and we actually use them to either give kudos to staff, to get an actual basically an actual read on what our constituents think of our services, of our facilities, and it's something that we're looking at continuing this year. It's really neat, and I'm always happy to share any of those reports with the council if you would like to see them. As you all know, I like data and I like numbers, and I didn't like that people would say, "Oh, I didn't," I didn't like.
No, I think it's a good way to capture more feedback. And so how many iPads or kiosks are you talking about?
We have 8 kiosks deployed currently.
Oh, we already have them deployed.
Mm-hmm.
And we're getting another one, or?
No, this is just to maintain that contract or that service, excuse me. It's not a contract, but that's basically what it costs for us to operate them and for the upkeep of the iPads. But yes, we implemented this program about a year ago, I would say, and it's been extremely valuable to our staff and our facilities. So
great. Okay, that sounds great. Going back to volunteer coordinator, so why do you feel like we need one new position for that? And wasn't there any other potentially new position like community engagement that could fulfill that role?
Chair Romero with Councilwoman Villarreal, that is a great question. I think the emphasis on this position is that we do receive requests, and we have organizations that would like to engage with the city of Santa Fe, or more importantly, with their community. And what we have is usually a breakdown of services that we have available. We do a great job in some areas, but we still have capacity gaps. And that's, I think, one of the things, at least for me and my budget and my request this year, was really looking at the areas that a lot of us, 5 of us can do a position, but we're not adding actual capacity to our team. And I think that's where some of our services struggle, especially in my department. It's an expectation that I try to exceed. And so with the volunteer coordinator position, we do receive requests, but we also are really working with departments. You may see we've launched a lot of Your Santa Fe. It's a campaign that we're working on with the Environmental Services Department, with our Parks Department, and of course with our department, to really encourage our residents as well as our city staff to not only remember that this is your Santa Fe, but to feel like they have a way of connecting with us. We do get requests for Arroyo cleanups, park cleanups, but just in general, volunteer opportunities are ways that our community wants to come together, or come together with our government. We see it with our seniors programs. People want to donate a lot of times also, like, hey, I have these donations, can I take them to the fire department? We see that, for example, during the colder months of the year, where people want to donate sleeping bags, toothbrushes. There's a lot of desires, like how can we help? What can we do? Can we go out to do on the ground outreach with some of these individuals? And that is a capacity gap where honestly, I'm either trying to call around to see what we can do. I think Izzy sometimes does that. Savannah does that. Like many members on my team do that. And if we really want to encourage residents at a base level to be engaged with their own community, it's something that we felt would be really beneficial to us as a whole. And just, I don't know why, but as a quick kind of note, we're doing some median recordings with parks to kind of walk through what our median cleanup looks like. And that it's the same message. Please, people, if you see litter, pick it up. You'd be surprised how many pictures we get from the CRM and people say, can you come pick up this water bottle that I saw on the sidewalk? And so this position will also be working closely with our constituent services and our communications team to make sure that we have consistent messaging around things that people can also do, whether it's planting trees, whether it's community gardens, whether it is, again, our more default, I think, tends to be kind of litter, trash, park cleanup, but also reading to seniors. We get requests for people on how they volunteer with the youth. Those types.
Is that a full-time position, Christine?
My desire is that it will be, yes, that we will be able to utilize this position year-round across the board for a variety of things. And just one more example where this came up literally last week was as we go into bike month and we're promoting riding a bike, it's also getting people who want to volunteer to teach kids how to ride their bike, how to work on their bikes, those types of things. And it's one of those areas where we all kind of look at each other and say, who can help coordinate volunteers to have some of these camps? And so that was just a recent example from Thursday where I met with MPO, GCC, our comms team, and we were trying to figure out what programming or what organizations we could work on during Bike to Work Month or in May that would have people who are willing to volunteer to help teach kids how to ride their bikes and ride their bikes without training wheels. So
are you, what was the funding for this position?
I don't know.
Madam Chair, Councilor Villarreal, the total annual salary plus benefits is $80,267 for the volunteer coordinator position.
I guess when you describe both of these two new positions, I feel like depending on the year and what's happening, that they are kind of one and the same. The community engagement is also could potentially look at volunteer opportunities. I guess I just don't see it as two full-time positions. Did you think about maybe just adding one and rolling in both possibilities into one position?
Chair Romero Worth, Councilwoman Villarreal, I actually did not think in my mind one was really to execute and lead our community engagement, and one was really focused on our volunteer kind of need in different ways. So I did not. I will absolutely take your feedback for that, but.
Okay. Well, it's just something that I think we should consider because it sounds very similar to the things, because they're all related to community engagement and interactions, but that's just how I see it. I'll move on to the shopping carts. I think this is a short-term solution, but have you all thought about how we can work with stores to prevent this from actually happening? I just feel like there's this accountability factor, and it's like herding shopping carts or herding cats. It's like trying to get all these shopping carts and get them to the right or appropriate stores.
Councilwoman, I do have some legislation that's going to come forward to hold the stores accountable. That'll be something coming forward. I do also just want to say it is 2:05. We have 5 more budgets to get through. So just want to make you aware, we've spent over an hour on this budget so far. So just
Actually, we started
flag
late,
that.
so it's been under an hour, and I think the other ones are easier. This one's pretty heavy.
Yeah, no,
with a lot
I
of
think we need
changes.
totally,
So-
totally agree that this one is worth spending time on, and I think we're going to be spending some more time on it, but just want to make you aware of where we are in the afternoon.
Thank you. The last thing that I will say, and thank you for all the responses, Christine. I think I just want to express that across the board, because we didn't really get to talk about this yesterday, about just how we're seeing the evolution of pay increases and what that looks like. And we'll probably be hearing about this more, obviously, in different departments. But I think the elephant in the room for me is just the inequity I'm seeing with the pay increases. I think that we are continuously trying to retain our staff and keeping good people on our team. And I see a lot of our departments and individuals and what people do as essential workers. And so to me, making it equitable across the board to have an 8% increase is where we should be looking at. All these ups and downs from different positions, whether it's directors or a different department, doesn't make sense to me right now. And I think someone's gonna have to convince me otherwise, but I see our increases and salary increases, that they should be equitable across the board. That we should be all getting not we, because we don't get increases, obviously, but as counselors, but I'm saying like in our staff and how we look at it and the changes that we've made and the needs that we have and these ability to retain and having these incentives, I think they're all extremely important, and I want us to continue doing that. But when I think about equity and how we all need to support each other and realize that we have essential staff in so many different areas, I would like to continue thinking for everybody to just get across the board 8%. And yeah, I'll leave it at that. I'm just not in favor of how certain individuals are getting staff increases, and certain departments are getting double what everybody else is getting. And so I'm just going to put that out there now. I'm not in favor of this right now. I think that since we have these points in time, like a midterm check-in, we can look at those possibilities for increases at the midterm point or the midway point. And I say that because I'm still unsure about the economy. You know, we're doing good now, but I'm still not convinced it's going to keep going in this manner, especially with what we're seeing. Just what we talked about yesterday really kind of like put it to light for me. So I'm just going to put that out there, and in that regard, a lot of these things that I brought up today, I won't be able to support this particular budget at this time.
Councilwoman, would you like some of the philosophy behind that last statement? And I would take the city clerk off the hot seat on that and refer to the city manager or the mayor, since they are both here.
Yeah, I think it's important. I didn't know when we could talk about this. We didn't have any space yesterday because that was kind of an overview. I feel like an overview.
Well, we have two people here today who I think can maybe give you broader context and philosophy about that. If you're interested, or whether you just wanted to make that comment, I don't know.
Well, I want to make that comment, but I would like to know about philosophy and reasoning behind it. It's just that applies to all these other departments, and we're focused on community engagement right now. So,
okay, well,
and there's other
if
questions.
the city manager or the mayor would like to give us some of the philosophy behind the pay
and
increases.
it's not about individuals. That's what's hard.
Yeah, that's what I want to take it up. And that's why I don't want it to be about any one person. I just maybe generally, but I don't see either of them raising their hand in response to my offer. All right, City Manager Blair.
Thank you, Councilor Romero, Councilor Vacant, for the question. I'm going to break this up and speak to part of it, and I think I'll let the mayor speak to part of it as well. You sort of made reference to, I think you were making reference, Councilor Mateo, to the recommended budget proposal that gives an 8% raise to essentially all city employees, but for our police department, where we recommended a 16% increase. There are a variety of reasons for that. One of which is we know that state government is providing a 16% increase, or it's a requisite sort of level increase to their state police. We are in a position right now where I think most everyone on this call on the Zoom would agree that we need to be hiring more police officers, not losing police officers. As recently as this week, there have been stories in the paper about concerns about public safety in the rail yard and Guadalupe Street and other places in the community. And so we believe it fundamentally important that we do all we can to ensure that the rates that we're offering police officers are at or above a competitive level, that we're able to attract people to come work for the Santa Fe Police Department, both men and women. And that that's fundamentally what that was about. And I will sort of just in full candor sort of broadly share my sort of view of government generally is that I think there's often sort of a sense that everyone needs to be treated equally. And I think intuitively that sounds right. You know, we believe in equity and equality, but what we're trying to do is treat everybody fairly. And in this particular case, I appreciate the comments made by AFSCME and their leadership yesterday, the fire union president yesterday. We fundamentally believe that there is a greater concern right now for this community to ensure that we are doing all we can to bring more police officers into our team. That is why we made the decision to fundamentally provide them a larger raise than we did the rest of city employees. So that I can speak to that. Mr. Mayor, I don't know if there's anything you want to add to that or speak to anything else, since we're keeping it at the high level. I don't know if that was helpful.
I think the philosophy conversation is really important to start with, and I think it's good to get that conversation going, even if it doesn't lead to a conclusion in this meeting. I think we ought to continue it, not just in budget season, but across the board. You know, Councilman Villarreal is one of the people who knows better than anybody that cartoon that shows three people trying to look over a fence, and the people who are the shortest need the tallest boxes, and equity isn't giving short people the same size box as a tall person. And we've all seen that in trainings around equity, fairness, inclusivity, as well as what we experienced yesterday, an opening meeting on implicit bias that is long overdue. And I know Councilwoman Villarreal has been asking for that. And finally, thanks to the chart process, it's moving forward, and I highly recommend it. It was a good opening start. I do believe that we want to be respectful of everybody, and respect starts with understanding where they are and where their needs are, what their capabilities and roles are. At the same time, as the city manager said, giving everybody the same treatment as if that were equitable and fair doesn't really lead to the city government that we need. And I'll treat it as an inverse example rather than speaking to adding salary. Imagine a hypothetical budget a couple of years ago when there's COVID and our revenues drop precipitously and we are forced to make budget cuts. Well, one philosophy of budget cuts is you take a meat cleaver and everybody gets a 5% cut across the board, everybody. Doesn't matter what your function is, 5%. Most people I know in the world of public policy and budgeting would say that's a ham-fisted approach, that not all of the functions and departments should be treated equally, because you end up lopping off 5% from some very small organizations that are essential. 5% puts them out of business. Other organizations that are deemed more mission critical, losing 5% really leads to significant service cuts in areas where there are high priority needs. So what we like to think we do when we're having to make cuts is work with a strategy and an approach that emphasizes the results we're trying to achieve and the needs and priorities of the community, done when you're doing cuts, not with a meat cleaver, but with a scalpel. And I believe the same philosophy applies when you're growing. You don't, by any stretch of the imagination, simply say everybody gets the exact same budget increase or the exact same financial treatment, because we do have priorities that change over time and reflect our community needs, our environmental needs, felt and lived experiences that rise to the surface as more urgent right now. And so I think that the notion of how we use our resources strategically and also with respect and paying proper attention to everybody's needs, but some being more strategic or having a higher priority, those are not mutually exclusive. We can do both. And I think that's the philosophy that's in the budget. I think Director McCoy has also done an outstanding job of matching the source of the money to the purpose for which the money will be put. Because not all money is the same. Some money is more likely to continue. Other money will be a one-time allocation or is a different source of money. Some money comes with strings attached. So we try to be mindful of that as well. We don't treat all money the same. We don't spend it the same. And we have to have the ability to make judicious distinctions among and between the purposes to which we put that money. That is a very high-level philosophical discussion. I hope I didn't go on too long. I just think it is, Councilwoman Villarreal raises a good point. Not just what do we do, but why and how do we do it is worthy of exploration and real discussion.
Yeah, and we do need to have these conversations and make time for them. And so I just wanted to kick that off a little bit with that entree. So Councilwoman, did you have anything further? Okay. I'm going to go then to Councilor Rivera, who has been very patiently waiting with his hand up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just want to thank Councilwoman Villarreal for her thoroughness and thank Councilor Lindell for asking about the copy machines. I had the same questions. I did want a little bit of clarification on the money for chart committee, which I heard was to continue the work for this fiscal year. Did I miss that? Ms. McCoy?
Madam Chair, Councilor Rivera, the $125,000 that is included in this presentation would be an appropriation for fiscal year 23. I believe as Director Mihelsek did outline, there's 25,000 of that 125,000 that is intended to continue the current chart process through, I believe she mentioned August when the contract was extended through.
So why is it in this budget and not really where chart resides?
Madam Chair, Councilor Rivera, that's a great question that goes to speak to the complicated nature of our chart of accounts and the multiple different funding sources that we have. The arts and culture chart, the chart process has lived in the arts and culture with the arts and culture department and staff. That particular department is solely funded with lodger's tax. So we made a decision last year at this time that the resources that were to be allocated to this chart process were to be funded out of the general fund. Therefore, we had to find a general funded department to be able to support this allocation, just to keep it a little bit cleaner. That being said, the current allocation is a little over 300,000, is currently in the community engagement budget. And the 125,000 that we are proposing will continue to out of the general fund will continue to live in the community engagement department, although the arts and culture staff will continue the duties and responsibilities with the chart process.
Will it then take a bar to spend the money?
Madam Chair, Councilor Rivera, no, it will not.
Okay, thank you. And I appreciate the answer on the police department, but really we're looking at community services. So just curious as to why an 8% for the staff in the city clerk's office and in community services, community engagement, why 8% there, but more for the city clerk? And I don't know, I don't want to put the city clerk on the spot, but maybe Mr. Blair.
Sure, absolutely. I'm happy to, Mr. Mayor, were you going to jump in? I'm happy to start.
Let me start. You and I we have similar but slightly different roles. So, Councilor, I appreciate your raising this. I think it's important to carry on the philosophical conversation we just had and bring it to practical application. There are 3 individuals who by charter report to the mayor, and who the mayor is responsible for supervising and negotiating salary and performance with. One is the city manager, another is the city clerk, and another is the city attorney. Those 3 people by charter report to the mayor. The mayor, by the way our city government laws work, is their supervisor and is responsible for negotiating salary. In the case of the city clerk / community engagement position, we have an individual. Let me just back up again. Most compensation professionals try to deal with the issue of what pay is an equitable pay level for an individual by establishing criteria and making sure that there is a systematic approach to a negotiation over salary. In this case, I had 3 criteria. One was overall performance of duties, execution of responsibilities, workload assumed and deliverables, scale of the effort required, the size of the department that the individual oversees, the complexity of the work, and so on. So it's a performance base. Second is looking externally at what other people with similar, if not exactly identical, pay performance requirements are paid. In effect, a class and comp evaluation among New Mexico governmental entities. Nothing is quite exactly the hybrid that we created when we combined the city clerk with the community engagement office, but you can get some idea by looking at different roles of different people in different jurisdictions. And then the third is internal comparisons to people who are heading up significant parts of our city government, and whether the role of this director is being paid commensurate with the duties and responsibilities that have been assigned. Based on all of those factors, as the supervisor, I reached the conclusion that with this start of a new fiscal year, a pay increase was warranted, and that an amount that that we could agree on would be put into the budget as the amount to increase the salary of the individual who holds that job. It really, again, if you think about the conversation we just had about what constitutes fairness or equity or responsibility, compensation plays a role in that, as do other factors, including respect, dignity, fair treatment, job quality of job, internally and externally, ways that people are treated. And I believe that the individual we have in this position has done an outstanding job, brings deep and significant value to city operations that cut across all departments and reach out into the community, including serving us as will be evident tonight at our governing body meeting, and that the position is warranted to be compensated differently than other positions that don't have the same kind of responsibility or bear the same kind of cross-cutting provision of services. It is, as I said to start, just one of 3 positions that by charter the mayor is designated as the supervisor of, and therefore does also have a slightly different relationship when it comes to compensation than other department heads who go through the city manager. I don't know, Mr. Blair, did you want to comment? I may have either added too much or left some things out.
I think you did a great job, sir. I don't think I have anything to add to that.
If I can, Counselor, I do want to throw in, and I think our city attorney is with us. We typically, and I think legally, I mean, we don't have in front of us a salary schedule of all city employees. So we don't approve salaries. This one's just been flagged as part of the budget because of the high profile nature of this individual. But we don't, part of our budget work, we approve lump sums for salaries and benefits. We do not decide who gets what salary, employee by employee, correct?
Chair Romero-Worth, that's correct. You are budgeting by category. So any decision you make on this budget will not definitively result in any particular outcome for any particular employee's salary.
So we are not really, it is not our job, our role to say, yes, you get this salary, no, you don't get that salary. That's, we're approving a budget that has lump sum line items that do particular work for whatever it is they're allocated for. That's kind of a convoluted way of saying it, I guess, but.
I would just clarify that do particular work isn't related to a particular individual, right? It is the category and the function of the department that and the amounts, the total amounts that you're approving by salary, contracts, and other categories. Right?
Yeah. So we have really no control over who gets raises and who doesn't by individual.
Chair Romero, that's accurate.
In the budget.
I'm sorry, Councilor Rivera, I'll go back to you.
Just curious why it's in the budget then.
I can
It says
speak.
8% salary increase for non-union and a 12.2% for the city clerk.
Yeah, Counselor, I think, again, I appreciate your bringing this up because I do think it's important for all of us to talk to each other and put these issues out there. I think because it does divert from the so-called norm or the proposed level of 8%, we were wanting to be as transparent and sharing of information as possible so that there would be no perception of anything that people would feel was not forthcoming. It is slightly different than other allocations. As I said, I think I'm happy to sit down either individually or in a small group and talk through how I approach financial compensation and other compensation as well, because it is not only money that dictates the appreciation we show to our employees. In this case, I felt that the responsibility of the job, the team, the level of the job, the part of the executive team that this role fulfills, the creation of a new role based on the reorganization, which goes far beyond what we ever asked a city clerk to do per se in the past, as well as external and internal comparables gave me a good reason to add above 8% to the pay compensation package in this one case. But it is different, and different can sometimes be perceived as either unfair or uncalled for, or not being forthright and transparent about. So I welcome more conversation offline anytime about this specific item, or in general, how we go about attracting, retaining, developing the best possible people for city government. We are only as good as our people. And in many of our people, like the individual in this case, we have an outstanding person who I want to recognize, reward, retain, develop, and not lose.
Yeah, I think that goes across her department. There was some justification that I heard for the police, and some of it was the raises that they just got with the 16%. And then I heard a class and comp evaluation was done to justify this one. So I assume we can get that fairly quickly since it's already been done.
I'm not the HR director, Counselor, but to my knowledge, we have not completed a class and comp study at this time. It is a work underway. We did one if you remember, we did one several years ago. It was the first one that we had done 3 or 4 previously. They'd never been, money had never been allocated to make good on the findings. In that particular class and comp study, we did make good on the promises. I think Ms. McCoy, Director McCoy could recall exactly how much money we allocated to fund the class and comp study once the findings were delivered. This class and comp study won't be done until later this next fiscal year. But
So you did not say that there was a class and comp evaluation that was done on other clerks?
I apologize. I thought you meant a one done by the HR department. I have some comparables from other jurisdictions. It was not done as a funded study. It was more, if you recall, when we hired Mr. Blair, we had a table that represented other city managers around New Mexico, and I have a similar set of data, but and I can certainly share that with you. It is a little bit, because our position is somewhat unique, there is nothing that exactly lines up to the department that we created when we combined the city clerk with the community engagement piece. So, but I'm happy whenever you want. I'm not sure you want to use the rest of the time right now, but I can walk you through those numbers, or any other member of the committee, so you see what rough cut approximations look like.
If you can send us the table that you were talking about, that would be great.
You bet. No problem. Absolutely.
All right. That's all I have. Madam Chair, I think I do agree with Councilwoman Villarreal. I'm not sure that I can approve this budget until I see the additional information. Thank you.
Okay, I think if we're finished with the questions, I don't see anybody else's hands up. I am gonna set this budget aside for now. We are also missing one of our committee members due to illness. So we'll come back to this, and I don't think I think we're just gonna set it aside without taking a formal action at this point. And we will move on to, need to get back to my agenda. I believe we have the city attorney's budget up next.
Thank you, Councilwoman Romero Worth. I've got a couple members of my team in the attendee room.
We can move
Irene
them in.
Romero and Jesse Guillen,
Great.
who has rejoined us as of today after his paternity leave. So I'm excited to have him back.
Welcome. He looks very paternal.
He looks tired.
No, I've been happy to see him jumping back into action today. So I would like to welcome both of them. Irene Romero is our administrative manager for the city attorney's office, and Jesse Ginn has been recently reclassified as our legislation and policy innovation manager. So most of the changes to the city attorney's budget happened in the mid-budget review in December. And that was the 3 additional positions that moved into our budget. The Ecrb manager, who starts on Monday, very excited about that. And then the policy analyst, who we will soon post, and the other records specialist, who had previously been focusing on police records and still will be focusing on police records, but from a group of records custodians, which is our 3rd team. So my office does have now 18 positions. 8 of those are attorneys, which includes my position, 2 senior assistant city attorneys, 5 assistant city attorneys, and those 5 include the city prosecutor, who's based at municipal court. And then we have essentially 3 teams that work with us. One is our administrative support team, and that includes Ms. Romero and the 3 paralegals, one of whom is stationed at municipal court, and we actually have that paralegal, a new one starting on Monday as well. The other 2 are based out of City Hall and support the other attorneys. Then we have the 3 personnel who are for the Office of Records Custodians. So now we'll have 3 folks acting on behalf of the city to respond to Ecrb requests, which is great. So that'll average out to $2,000 per person, but it will probably not be distributed quite that evenly because some are more complex than others. And then the 3rd office is the legislative and policy innovation. And so that's Jesse, Jeff, and the policy analyst once we hire that person. So we are very excited to get those 3 teams fully staffed here very soon. And let's see, our mission, let's see, I've got that on a different screen, it looks like.
Here, on the Prime Gov,
Yes.
under department review, under city attorney, I'm getting nothing. I'm not seeing any attachments like I see for other departments. Should there be some there?
I'm going to defer to our budget director. Director McCoy, do you know the answer to that question?
She'll be right here.
Okay,
Counselors.
thank you.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
if Councilor Lindell clicks on department review, and there's 2 attachments, one's just the overall budget book, but there is a tab for general government. And that has the general government. They're not separated like we usually have them. They're all put under general government. I think all attorney, city manager, city council, and mayor are all in that.
Yep, I see it. Do you see that, Counselor?
I do, and then there's 2 attachments. One of them's from the budget book.
Yes, the second attachment is basically a repeat of the budget book.
Okay.
As
Okay,
we shared there.
thank you.
Okay,
It doesn't have a chart in it though, like the other ones did for vacancies and,
on the first page, it does all of them together. So 49 in FY22, 49 recommended in FY23, number of vacant positions 9, vacancy rate 18%. It's on the first page.
thank you.
Okay, sorry, City Attorney McSherry, I think you were mid presentation, correct?
I was actually able to locate the other document on my screen during that time, so I'm fine, thank you. But out of those 49, 18 are in my office to just tie it back into our context. And currently we have 1 assistant city attorney vacant that we are interviewing for this week. We just completed the second interview this morning, and we have the policy analyst position that we hope to post very soon. All the other positions are full or filled. Our mission is to advise, defend, and protect the city, enforce its laws in a timely and just manner, and administer the Office of Policy Innovation and the Office of Records Custodians. We advise and represent the city of Santa Fe, including the mayor, governing body, committees and boards, and employees when those actors are serving in the scope of their professional duties. We provide advice through attorney-client privileged and public forums, and we represent the city in negotiations, arbitrations, mediations, courts, and other forums. And then we include those two teams that I mentioned before that are more like clients, but they serve a large role that has a lot of legal interaction. So it does work well to have both of them in our office. I think I mentioned this already, but the primary changes that have happened since the prior year budget occurred in the mid-year budget review. And then the changes that you're seeing highlighted are primarily the, I think there was a little bit of a decrease in both the legal contracts, because I think we had anticipated potentially ongoing Midtown Council that has been essentially delayed based on our change in Midtown strategy. And then there was, I think, extra funding put in our office supplies last year that was essentially a bank error. So we're not asking for that same error this year. And I'm happy to answer questions.
Great. If we can stop sharing the screen, that helps me see who's waving at me. And while I wait for people to think of questions for you, just a quick question. Have you ever thought about having a deputy? Is that
Romero, I'm happy you asked that. I would absolutely put a deputy into work if given the opportunity. I think we didn't have a position description to propose this year, so I am looking at some other jurisdictions. So I did not get that expansion request in this year to be considered. But I am looking at how other offices are functioning across the state and elsewhere to see how that might work. My understanding is, and Ms. Romero has been with our office for over 20 years, which is highly appreciated, all of her historic memory of how things have functioned. The last time we had a deputy was about 20 years ago. So we don't have that position description, it seems like. I did look into it with HR and our own records. So I'm getting some examples from other jurisdictions to look at. And if I were to have that type of a position, I would definitely break up the attorney team a little bit to be maybe more strategic. And we'd have some maybe specialty teams within our group. Right now, everyone's pretty, there's only one person who does everything. Basically, every topic has its own attorney, and we do have backups, but I think, if we were given a little more flexibility, we could even do more of a team approach than we've been able to do since I've been here, which I think has been something that I worked on as one of my strategies. So that would be one of the advantages of that. And then just spreading out supervisory duties. I do have 10 direct reports currently, which includes the 7 attorneys and then the 3 team leaders.
Okay, interesting. Questions from the committee on this budget? Councilwoman Villarreal.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a quick question. There was a decrease of legal contracts by 276,000. I think that was what it was. Can you say more about that?
Sure. Chairwoman Romero with Councilor Villarreal. I think our request puts the budget more in line with our anticipated actual expenditures. There, 2 years ago, you might see that the actuals exceeded 700,000. That was one pretty large legal contract that we had then. And then I think we were keeping some of the budget for kind of a more significant legal contract that we thought we might be using this year for Midtown, depending on how the Midtown project went. But given that we are doing the rezoning in-house and we did not go through with a transaction with a developer this past year, we didn't utilize that legal contract. So the request is more in line with what we anticipate using this year as well.
Great, thank you for that. And I would say, again, since there is an increase for city attorney salary, and until I feel more comfortable with the pay increases in the budget overall, I won't be voting on this yet. So just wanted to let you all know, not that I don't think Aaron deserves more. I just want to get this clarified so I feel more comfortable about the uneven pay increases right now as I see it. So that's all I have, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Rivera.
Yeah, along that same line, there was, I guess, compensation evaluation that was done for the clerk. Was there one done for the city attorney? Mr. Mayor or Mr. Blair?
Absolutely. Sorry to be slow to respond, Counselor. I was listening in, but not framing an answer. Yes, sir. We have that as we do have a similar chart of what city attorneys in other jurisdictions make, and we can absolutely provide that. But I would be disrespectful if I didn't return the question to both Councilwoman Villarreal and Councilor Rivera. I overspoke in answer about my philosophy. I think if it's a real conversation, I would welcome the opportunity to hear your philosophy so that we can learn, not have it be a speech from me, but a dialogue about how compensation best works in city government. I feel like I may have overspoken, but I also want to leave room for a dialogue rather than a monologue from me.
Well, I think I've been under the philosophy, the thinking, the idea that it should be fair throughout. I think I value Aaron and I value Christine as much as I do all the people working underneath them. And to single out two specific people because of their relationship with you as people that you are responsible for doesn't make sense to me. I think it should be fair across the board. Clearly, I'm going to have the same questions and discussion probably with when it comes to the police department. Maybe that one's different, but for me, it would be nice to know that our employees are valued just as much as those that are already making the highest amount of money in the city.
I appreciate the further comments. I really do. I think we don't ever leave time for these discussions other than in one-on-one dialogue or personal conversations. But there are a lot of different ways to look at the issue of fairness and equity. I think in some governments, every department head makes the exact same amount of money, regardless of how big the department is. To me, that doesn't seem fair or equitable. In some areas, the only time people get, in some governments, people get pay increases when they take a new job, but then it's hard to get pay raises thereafter. And that leads to inequities or unfair, what is perceived to be unfair when you look at pay compensation internally. Our city clerk currently is making $55.07 an hour. Our city attorney, if I'm correct, is making $60.10 an hour, but our executive director of tourism is making $59.09. Our deputy police chief is budgeted at $57.78. Assistant land use director makes more money than the city clerk at $57.20 because of historical bumps over time and people getting paid different amounts when they negotiate their internal agreement to come to work. And so the question becomes, with people who are absolutely critical, high profile teammates at the highest and most demanding jobs, when and how do they get a chance to catch up to a situation that by most internal standards, by most governmental agencies, wouldn't be regarded as a good recognition of their service and an ample reward for their efforts. So we're struggling on an ongoing basis. It isn't ever done with one action. We have to do a little here and a little there at both the top and at the top highest paid and throughout the departments. Over the last 4 years, we've made efforts to increase pay and benefits for all of our employees. You, Counselor, were very instrumental last year in making sure that the city absorbed all of the additional healthcare costs for our employees because we were coming out of COVID and we wanted to assume that responsibility. We gave a 4% pay raise last year to all of our employees, and 8% is on the table this year. We did fund the only class and comp study ever to be completed when I became mayor. So I think it's an ongoing effort to demonstrate the commitment to recognition, reward, retention, development at all levels of the city government. And the three people who report to me by charter, I'm simply in a slightly different position, and they are in a slightly different position than folks who are covered by, let's say, a collective bargaining agreement. It is by charter not the same. And so treating people who are different the same is unfair as treating everybody the same, regardless of the size of their department or the required workload to perform their duties. We have to try to make reasonable distinctions where they apply. That's again, this is a philosophy. There isn't one philosophy. Different points of view are always welcome, and that's why I think the chair has been very permissive in allowing me to go on perhaps a little too long, because as noted before, we really don't take the time to talk these things out.
Yeah, and I've always been trying to take care of the person that makes $15 an hour that's dealing with higher gas prices and higher food prices versus the person that's making $60 an hour who may not be as affected.
And I always tried to do both.
If I can interject here, and I don't know whether we need Byrne or whether the city manager can speak to this. We've a couple times talked about the class and comps, and the class and comps study is targeted at a particular strata of city employee, and the couple of employees that we've been talking about this afternoon are not part of that class and comps study. They, sometimes they have contracts, sometimes they don't. And I think, historically they have had contracts, and we're moving into a different situation here where they don't have contracts anymore. They don't want contracts. And so we're in kind of new charted territory, right? And we don't, I think we may even be prohibited by law from deciding particular salary levels. And there's good reason for that, right? Because you don't want city councilors pulling out favorites and saying, yeah, I want to give my cousin a raise, or I want to, give this city employee who I work with a lot and think is very responsive to me, I want to give them a raise. So that would be unfair, right? So that's why we don't get involved in deciding which employee gets one salary, but we have different stratas of employees across the city. I believe we have, kind of the bulk of our city employees would be covered by a class and comp study. And then we have, kind of the what do you call it? Your what's the word I want? You got your high level staff. What do you you have a meeting?
Exempt directors.
Yeah, well, yeah, maybe they're exempt, but they're also your, senior staff. That's what I'm trying to say. So in that senior staff, you have 3 that are charter created, that report directly and are supervised by the by the mayor, by the executive. And then you have all the other directors that are supervised by the city manager. So it is sort of complicated. And I guess, I don't know, is what I'm saying correct? And I don't know who's the best person to answer that, is that class and comps does not cover people like the city attorney
So,
and city clerk.
Madam Chair, the last class and comp study we did, in fact, did include city attorney's position and gave a spread.
Okay.
It did not include the city clerk, it specifically excluded the city clerk. So that position was not subject to that kind of evaluation. We do have kind of a back of the envelope set of data that Councilor Rivera asked for earlier that I'm happy to provide. Doesn't have the benefit of a professional class and comp consultant, but does give some indications about what would be some market rate pay scale for people filling positions that don't match up one-to-one, because it really is a new role that we created with the reorganization. There was included in that prior class and comp study that I inherited, and that both Director Salazar and Director McCoy worked incredibly hard to fix and bring forward so that we could have something that we would work with to fund, to make sure that the people that Councilor Rivera was just speaking about, the people who are at the lowest end of our pay scale, get brought into the band of market rate pay. And that was the priority for that study, was that if you look at a pay band, we had way too many people below minimum, and we expended a substantial amount of city resources to lift everybody into that market pay band, and trying not to do a compression where we crushed salaries together and therefore people couldn't advance or get pay increases going forward in the future, or people who were reporting to somebody else were making more money than the people they were reporting to. So it is both an art and a science.
And I think we've been, looking at salaries, whether you're the lowest paid city employee or the highest paid city employee, we've been working on, making sure that everybody is paid as they should be, given whatever the nature of their job is I guess my point. And there are different ways of doing that. Councilor Rivera, you still had the floor.
I think I'm done, Madam Chair. Thank you for allowing us to have that discussion here.
Yeah, and I guess then the other thing I would note is that the city attorney, if my memory serves, did start as the city attorney and did have a contract which she negotiated with the mayor, and that contract, correct me if I'm wrong, didn't allow for you to get raises when other city employees did over the course of the last 4 years. Am I correct in remembering that?
Councilwoman Romero Worth, that's correct.
Yeah, so when we gave city employees the raises that we've given them over the last 4 years, our city attorney, because of the contract she had, didn't get those raises. So in fact, hasn't had a raise in something like 3, 4, 3.5, somewhere in there years, correct?
Chairwoman Romero Worth, that's correct.
Yeah, and I think if we look at the comparables for city attorneys, we will see that our city attorney is underpaid when you look at the market. And certainly we can provide the committee with that information if it's something that would be helpful. Councilwoman Villarreal, your hand is up, and Councilor Rivera, I'm not sure if your hand's an old hand or a new hand, but I'll go to Councilwoman Villarreal.
No, I think that actually what you brought that up, it would be helpful, because we all are operating under the assumption that everybody gets the same, including folks or positions that are under the that report to the mayor, that everybody gets the same raise when we do a pay increase. So you're saying,
well,
Attorney
these
McSherry,
people,
that none of those applied to you the last? Actually, I'm curious. So furloughs didn't apply to you either?
Chairwoman Romero Worth, Councilwoman Villarreal, I took leave without pay in order to make sure I took the same cut as everyone else, but no, they did not apply to me and I did not have to take it. So I furloughed myself. Yeah.
Okay. And then the increases that we did the last year and then that midway point, none of those applied to you.
Chairwoman Romero Worth, Councilor Villarreal, that's correct. I think the other folks who were on contracts learned from my contract and then added in that they would be able to get pay raises.
And so again, this is where I think we have these three employees are different, right? The city manager,
Well, this
city
one's
attorney,
different. This
and the
is
city
different.
clerk. Typically they have all had contracts, right? And so their contracts have spelled out different things. Now, at the moment, none of these three high-level employees, senior employees, have contracts, which would have, spelled out things like what happens when they leave and what kinds of raises they're subject to and not subject to. And we don't
Well, you
have.
just said they're different.
They are.
Erin
and
does have a contract.
She does not.
So what were you referring to that you said that it wasn't written in your contract to not get a pay raise?
When
She
she
had a
started,
contract and it
she-
expired,
Yeah.
Councilwoman. She was one of the people who early on followed what was then the practice. And since then, as the chair lady has identified, the practice has changed of people going from it's normal and operationally convenient to have a contract to I would rather not have a contract and we'll deal with it without any protections or stipulations in a contract agreement. And so our current city attorney, and I think it's a little uncomfortable to put the
It
city.
is, but I guess it just, the information that we need, because it would be helpful, which is different from the other two positions. When did Erin's contract expire then?
Erin, do you want to answer that?
Councilwoman Romero Worth, Councilor Villarreal, I wasn't sure if you wanted me to answer since it didn't.
I don't want to put you on the hot seat. I think
It's
that's
fine. Mine
yeah.
expired in December. So mine was co-terminus with the first term of the mayor. So, so basically it had the protections. If I were to be let go before the end of the mayor's term, then there would have been a severance pay and that type of thing. And I opted not to try to renegotiate a new contract that would have those types of protections in the mayor's second term.
And I guess my only point is that these people are different than other city employees because they are by charter under the supervision of the mayor and the very most senior of the executive's team, the city manager, the city clerk, the city attorney. And you can see that in the charter in terms of who hires them and who has the ability to fire them. I believe, and City Attorney McSherry, I think the only person we can fire is the city manager by an extraordinary vote. We do not hire and fire either you or the city clerk.
Chairwoman Romero, that's correct. There's a confirmation for the city clerk and the city attorney, but there's not a provision for dismissal.
Right. So we provide advice and consent, much like the Senate, right? So you have members of the executive team that come that are picked by the executive, and then the Senate with the confirms, is asked for their advice and consent on the pick. So again, all I'm trying to say is that these few positions are different than your rank and file city employees.
Yes, we hear you and we understand that. I think what's different is that Erin hasn't gotten a raise and everybody else has of those three positions.
Yeah, and just to
So-
give you some comparables, the Santa Fe County attorney is paid $137,700. Los Alamos, $156,752. Albuquerque, $150,724. Flagstaff, Arizona, $200,000. Longmont, Colorado, 197,000. Lubbock, Texas, 250,000. I think, do we have the county? Santa Fe County, I read that first, 137,700. If you look at what the market is paying, city attorneys, government attorneys at the highest level, we are not competitive.
Well, I think in general, across the board, we're not competitive for any city position. We're all over the place. The class and comp didn't actually help us. I mean, it set this like kind of baseline, but we need to do it over. There's a lot of things, but I'm focusing on the 3 and specifically for Erin. If it would have helped us to know that and have that in the budget saying that actually Erin was under contract, it expired on December 2021, and she didn't get a pay increase at all compared to everybody else that did. Because this equity piece, like seeing everybody getting those pay increases is important. And then hearing that Erin didn't get any, that changes the scenario. So I'm just pointing that out, that she is, I don't want to single you out, but Erin's situation is different than the other 2 positions.
And the only thing I would also say about this is that we are not allowed to approve individual salaries. So that's not what we're doing here. By approving this budget, we are approving a lump sum for the supervisors of the people they supervise. They are the ones who work out those salary levels. We don't get to do that. We can't do that. And, we are working to bring salaries up, but there are different ways of doing that. Some people get class and comp. Some people are compared to the market rate. Some people have we just talked about one that's a hybrid. You can't even, there's nobody else to compare to. So I think you can't think that it's 8%, everybody gets that, and that's fair, because they are fundamentally different and they have to be looked at differently.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Councilor Rivera. If we really want to be fair, we'd look at people that make the least amount and then have a different kind of tiered pay increase. That would really be the equitable way to look at it, not just 8 across, but looking at a tier. But we don't have that in this budget. So we're looking at 8% and trying to make it fair and equitable in this case. So
I think Council.
I still have questions here.
But I think AFSCME, for instance, they get a lump sum, right? And they don't have to give everybody 8%. And in fact, I think if somebody who has more understanding of this, they did give higher raise to people who were making less. And that's their business. They get to do that.
I agree with that, but I'm talking about across the board, union, non-union, exempt. I'm talking about the pay that folks get and how we do increases based on the pay scale. So we could get into that philosophy, but I think we need to move on. And I want to know how to move forward with this, because
I'm concerned about that too.
Well, there's 2 things. We didn't vote, and we need to vote on the last budget we just did, even if it's vote to postpone for the community engagement. We didn't do that. And I don't know if there's a need to postpone. I wish I would have known this detail, which is a very important detail about Attorney McSherry's contract expiring. That's kind of changes, a game changer for me. So yeah, I don't know, Madam Chair, we need to vote on the other one and we need to vote on this one.
Well, I set the other one aside because we are missing a member and you all asked for more information, and
so we postponed those when we want more
we're clearly not ready to act on it, and I set it aside. I don't know what to do about this one. I would rather not set this one aside.
I think we need to vote on every single one, that even if it means we postpone it to a date certain. That's how we've always done it.
Councilor Lindell.
On that, exactly on that. So we don't vote though, just specifically on city attorney. It's the whole package of general government, correct?
Yep. We don't set the city attorney's salary any more than we set Yeah.
Yeah, I get that. I'm just trying to go along the lines of where Counselor Villarreal is, that I'm looking for guidance, really.
Yeah, me too. And the other reason why I keep thinking we can't vote as a general government department right now is because municipal court is tomorrow, not today. So they're not actually together.
Madam Chair, if I may address
Yes,
the protocol for
please.
voting on departments. The vote does occur by department, as Attorney McSherry mentioned earlier, department and category and fund. So as Councilor Villarreal mentioned, the municipal court judge was not able to join us today. So the last piece of the general government department will be heard first tomorrow. The general government department does include the city attorney's office, the municipal court, as well as the mayor's office, city council, and the city manager's office, and internal audit. So all of those would have to be voted on with one vote at the culmination of the presentation by Judge Vigil tomorrow.
Okay, so we're not voting on this on the city attorney's office right now. We're voting as general government, all of these together.
Madam Chair, yes, that is correct.
Okay. So many hands up, don't know whether they're old or new. Councilor Lindell.
I put mine down.
Oh, Councilwoman Villarreal.
So where does the internal audit then fall under?
Madam Chair, Councilor, it falls under the general government department.
It's not on the hierarchy of things. Does it fall under a certain division? It's not its own. I'm looking at the org chart. Is there like a?
Madam Chair, I think I can ask Andy Hopkins to clarify, but in the city's budget, the appropriation for the internal audit is contained within an org, correct, Andy? Within a chart of our accounts org that is called out as the internal audit.
Madam Chair, Director McCoy, you are correct. It is a separate org. It is actually classified in our city system as a separate division as well, but it is part of the general government department.
Okay, so we need to adjust our org chart then, based on what you're saying.
If that is the desire of the committee and council, then yes, we will do so.
Hold on a second. Attorney McSherry is raising her hand.
Chairwoman Romero with Councilor Villarreal. I would just say that when we did our reorg last year with the kind of clarification of departments, we did clarify that internal audit reports to the city manager. I don't have the org chart in front of me to see if it's reflected that way, but it's an independent office that reports to the city manager.
Okay. Thanks for that clarity. That would, I think it should reflect on the org chart because it doesn't show that now.
All right. Are there other questions about the city attorney's budget? I don't see any other. We're going to move on to the next budget, which is the city manager.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Counselor.
if I can't, based on what I just heard from everyone, I think I could now support the city attorney's budget. And if we could approve each individual one, I think that would be better than holding all of them up because I'm waiting for information on community engagement. Even if that goes in the parking lot, it can stay there, but at least we'd get the rest done. So we're not having to bring everything back up again.
Yeah, no, and I hear you, except that community engagement is not under the general, is my understanding, somebody correct me if I'm wrong, is not under the, I just lost the page, sorry, is not under the general government umbrella. So what I was doing is we'll just go through the rest of these, and because we don't have the municipal judge with us, we won't be able to vote on all of them until tomorrow morning. So it would be tomorrow morning under general government umbrella, we would be voting on the city attorney, city manager, internal audit, city council and mayor's office, and the municipal judge, all in one vote.
Okay. Clearly, it's up to you. That in other areas where we might have questions on one issue, even though if the courts could report today and we had a question on the city attorney, that would then delay everybody until we had the information on one. That's what I'm trying to say.
Right.
But I'll follow your lead, Madam Chair.
Yeah, well, and I guess I would just go to Director McCoy, who said these all fall under one umbrella. I mean, would it be easier if we vote each one separately?
Madam Chair, councilors, I would defer to our city attorney for guidance. I think as far as our budgetary technical perspective, either option would work. But if City Attorney McSherry could provide some guidance, that would be ideal.
Chairwoman Romero, Director McCoy, Councilor Rivera. I think either one could probably work in this instance, just because department is not extremely well defined and the budget is by department, and general government, I think, has been used as a budgetary construct. It's not created in ordinance as general government.
Okay, that's helpful. Councilwoman Villarreal.
Sorry to belabor this, but Attorney McSherry, we are voting on departments and we didn't vote on community engagement department today. So don't we need at least a postponement vote?
Chairwoman Romero, where is Councilor Villarreal? Are you saying because it's listed as a separate agenda item and there hasn't been a resolution of that? Is that the question?
Right. We didn't vote either way. We didn't vote to move it forward. We didn't make a motion to.
I set it aside as chair.
So if I were to be sick, would you have set it aside?
I can't answer that question. I guess the question is, do I have the prerogative to set it aside without having the committee take action on it when it's clear it has issues that we need to resolve?
Chair Romero, would you like me to look into the procedural issue? I can get back to you.
Why don't we do that?
Off for a second. Yep.
Why don't we do that?
Okay.
All right. And then in the meantime, sounds like perhaps we can vote on the city attorney's budget. And if the committee, what's the will of the committee?
I'll move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the city attorney's budget. Can we get a roll call, please?
Yes. Councilor Villarreal,
Yes.
Rivera,
Yes.
Councilor Cassett,
She's excused.
Councilor Lindell,
Yes.
and Councilor Romero Worth.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, that budget is approved. We do have an outstanding question about the community engagement department. We will get back to that. And in the meantime, we will move to the city manager's budget. And we have the city manager with us.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, councilors, for your time today. I'm currently very grateful for our city attorney for teaching me the term coterminous that I don't think I've ever heard before. And you learn something new every single day. Thank you. Thank you, city attorney. Pardon me. I'm a little asthma hoarse today, so I apologize if I sound a little fuzzier than normal. So the recommended budget request for the city manager department is $756.7 thousand. This is less than what was the FY19 budget request pre-pandemic, and it is an increase of about $344,000 over last year's fiscal budget request. A significant portion of that is related to the salary and benefits for the about to be announced deputy city manager who will be joining us here in a few weeks here at the city of Santa Fe. Part of that as well is that we have moved the contract, or we are moving the funds for our participation with the municipal league into the city manager's office and the city manager's budget. There are dollars there set aside for a contract with a new lobbying firm to help us with our work being done at the state legislature. And then some money that I'm setting aside in order to try and engage, as was mentioned during the committee meeting yesterday, some help in helping the city leverage both foundational and federal grants to try to help diversify the revenues that come into the city and to try to help bring in some matching dollars to some of the money that we're already setting aside for important programs. Beyond that, there's some money that I'm asking for contracts to be able to engage in strategic planning services, some leadership training, some management training for senior staff, and to do some more to sort of help bring about the most professional team that we can here at the senior level. There's not much more excitement to it than that. And so I'm happy to stand for any questions that you all have.
Thank you.
I'm a one slide person today.
I'm sorry, what?
I have one slide today. So
Yes. All right, if we can stop sharing, I believe we have this on Prime Gov and in our budget books. Questions from the committee? Councilwoman Villarreal.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a couple questions. There's 60,000 in your budget for the grant writing training. Can you tell us more about that?
Well, I think we're trying to move quickly about bringing an entity on to try to help begin this grant training. And so the purpose of the money is to begin contracting right as quickly as we can. I think we're going to try to bring somebody on contract immediately and then at the same time work on an RFP to have an open process. And so what we're trying to do is I think the way that we're navigating the grant writing is, as an initial step, there are some entities that we're aware of that provide actual work to be done around identifying grants, helping staff get the grant applications in, helping them get the money in the door and helping manage them when the money does come in the door. At the same time, long-term counselor, I think what we're working towards is getting training from some of these entities, not this fiscal year, this is down the road, where we would hire some of our own full-time FTE grant staffs who would be responsible for identifying grants in the future, managing them for the various departments, et cetera. So that's the direction that we're headed in for this funding.
So that would be a potential long-term contract?
I think we're looking at a short-term contract that to get the ball rolling and at the same time initiating an RFP that would be for a longer period of time. And then we go from there. But again, we're trying to, the mayor keeps teasing me for using this phrase, but we're trying to cook with gas and I'm trying to move as quickly as we can to get this going.
And this particular contractor would be accessible to all departments that are seeking or needing assistance with grant support.
Madam Chair, Councilor Villarreal, that's the intent for sure. I think some of the guidance that I've received, and I know that you share some contact with me, I'm going to reach out to your contact later this week to talk to them about how to sort of navigate this process. The guidance that I get from outside City Hall is that we need to be deliberative in how we start doing these grants. Because if we swing for the fences and ask for a $10 million grant, we may not have the staff in place to really manage the grant, make sure the money is being spent on time, et cetera. So what I sort of foresee us doing is working in a manner that we start with some smaller grants. And it can be within any department. We're happy, I'm happy to consider, the next step will be for us to meet with senior management once we get someone under contract to help us find out what the greatest needs are, find out what, I don't want to use the phrase low-hanging fruit, but essentially what's some low-hanging fruit out there, either from foundations or from the federal government, that we can begin to implement these processes internally, identify how we do it, what are the processes, what are the steps, and then grow from, once we've done a couple small ones, get bigger, get bigger, get bigger. So that's the direction that we're heading. But the intent will be that it be for all departments. Whatever, I sort of view this, counselor, in full candor as there's a whole lot of federal money out there. Our federal delegation does a great job. In particular, Congresswoman Teresa Fernandez, Senator Heinrich, Senator Lujan, who are willing to work with us to help do this. But we do need some extra help, like a lot of municipalities do across the city, to really be as aggressive as we can to bring those dollars.
Sounds good. And I think one entity I know of, the Grant Plant, does this as a regular service, a nonprofit service, just to flag that. And then, let's see, the other question I had was about the increase. Find it on the page. It's an increase for the deputy city manager. So we approved this mid-year at the mid-year point for 133,000 for deputy. But now we're asking for an additional 159, or what? Can you explain that increase?
Councilor Romero Worth, Councilor Villarreal, I would actually ask Director McCoy to help answer what happened before I got here. I'm not sure I know the answer to that.
Madam Chair, Councilor, the position that was approved, I believe, happened a few months ago. This is the funding for the full year cost of the position for all 12 months of fiscal year 23.
So what was the 133,000 that we approved? Well, we approved having a deputy city manager position, and then there was also an amount for salary.
Madam Chair, Councilor Villarreal. So this was when I got here, was with the job description. So the governing body does not get to vote on whether I was able to hire a deputy city manager. The debate that was had is that the ordinance provides that the governing body can weigh in on the job description. And so the job description provided our salary range. And I think the number that you're referring to, the 133, was the high point of that range. But I don't believe that, pardon me, I don't believe any dollars were actually set aside for that position at that time.
So what is the funding for this position then?
The salary is $110,000, and then the difference are the associated costs for taxes and benefits, et cetera.
So 159 is salary plus the benefits?
Mm-hmm.
The base though is 110, you said? It's not 133.
Councilor Romero Worth, Councilor Villarreal, that's correct. The base
Okay.
salary will be $110,000.
Got it. Okay. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
And if I'm remembering correctly, you had only a certain amount of time in which you could act to hire. Once you were hired as the city manager, you had 30 days or something in order to decide whether you needed a deputy according to our ordinances, right?
Pardon me, Councilor, Madam Chair. It was more, I believe it was 60 days in which for me to hire someone. And so I think within the offer date, I think we hit that mark, but I can follow up and confirm that for you.
Okay. City Attorney McSherry, your hand is up.
Chairwoman Romero Worth, City Manager Blair, I think we had to get approval of the position description within the 60 days. And then I don't know that the hiring date, we can double check on that, but the 60 days I think was approval of the position description so that we could post it.
Yeah, I remember there being some sort of urgency to that if you didn't take advantage of it, you were going to lose the ability to do it. So, all right, questions from the committee. Councilor Lindell.
Thanks, Chair. Just a quick question, City Manager Blair, and this is the first time we've had the pleasure of you at these hearings, so welcome. It's I've certainly enjoyed having the opportunity to work with you. Just give us a brief 40,000 foot philosophical insight as to how a deputy city manager fits into our organization and how as an organization we all benefit from that.
Madam Chair, Councilwoman Lindell, thank you for the questions and the kind words. Today, I think, is my 3-month anniversary. So any gifts or cards or balloons you'd like to send for governing body, I'll be here until dark. So, happy to get that. Just kidding. Yeah, so Counselor, I think that, and I spoke a little bit to this, I think when we were having the debate around the need for a deputy city manager, is that, I think we've got an extraordinary team leading the city of Santa Fe. We've got an extraordinary team of employees who are working here at the city of Santa Fe and doing all they can to serve the residents of Santa Fe. But like all government entities, we can get stronger, we can get better, we can get faster. And there is a real intent on my part that the deputy city manager will begin to really focus on helping to strengthen the city of Santa Fe team and to help us modernize and professionalize some of the processes and systems in which we're serving the public. I think you've heard me speak about sort of building out capacity. The goal is ultimately to have this person. I will use a phrase from a movie that the mayor likes to use a lot. Help me help you. This deputy city manager is going to be to help the senior leadership folks and the other people running city government to help themselves to do a better job. Out of the gate, some of the initial projects that I'm going to want to have the deputy city manager working on include finding with each department director what are their top 3 vacancies that they have that need to be filled. Be that foot on the gas pedal to make sure that they're working with the department directors on getting the forms completed they have to get done, working with HR to make sure they're pushing to get this done, working with Director McCoy's team to make sure the finances are approved, but that we're not looking up in December saying, we really should try to fill some of these vacancies. We want to get them filled as quickly as possible, get smart, creative, innovative people in the door to help run government in a better way. The second piece will be, as I mentioned earlier to Councilor Villarreal, is to learn how we can begin to set up our own diversity, equity, and inclusion programs, both for internal services and how we relate with each other, but also how we interact with the public. And then there are some initial systems that I think that we need to begin modernizing in a way that meet the 21st century needs of our staff, including how is our onboarding system working, modernizing the way in which as employees are made offers, how we get them in the door, what we do. So there's a variety of those sorts of, I don't want to call them inside, but they're kind of inside baseball. It's really improving the way that we as a city staff work together and serve the community as a whole. So I don't want to, I know that I think I'm in the middle of the 6 or 7 reports, but that's as quickly as I could sort of to try to answer your question, Councilor.
Just what I was looking for. Thank you, City Manager Blair. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Rivera.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't know if anyone remembers, but I didn't vote for this position, but I do recall the discussion being about $112,000 salary with benefits, bringing it up to $133,000. Is that not correct?
Madam Chair, Councilor Rivera, I don't recall the exact details. All I have been working off of was the salary range within the job description that was approved by the governing body. And so I don't recall enough about the exact discussion to your point. I don't remember that language, so.
Is Ms. Salazar on, Madam Chair?
I believe, yep, there she is. Ask and she shall appeal.
Madam
Ms.
Chair,
Salazar?
yes, Councilor Rivera, sorry, I'm on my way to an appointment, so if the reception is bad, I apologize. I don't recall the exact amount, but I believe that the $110,000 was the base salary, and then depending on what benefits are selected, that would could potentially change. Again, depending on what's selected by the new employee.
And what's the average benefit percentage that is added to a salary to try to figure out the entire compensation package?
The average, go ahead, Mary.
Madam Chair, Councilor, we don't actually apply an average. We apply an actual rate based on the health package or the dental package for the upcoming year. So I would say if I had to put an average on it, it's probably between, it's a large range, but 35 and 45%, because some of our fire and police union have the retiree health care enhanced program. And because there is such a large range in our health insurance as well, from a single carrier to a family plan. So those would be some of the variables that would go into that range between 35 to 45%.
All right, so really, if we looked at a $112,000 salary with benefits, bringing it up to 133, that's only like a 20% bump for benefits. You're saying that's pretty low?
Madam Chair, Counselor, yes. This particular in this particular case, that is the 159,000 is the fully loaded salary plus benefits. Again, at those pretty average rates, not at the highest family rate, and nor at the lowest. So we try to really carry for all vacant positions that middle of the road estimate, in the event that we understand some employees that are hired on will be at the family plan and others will either decline or be at the single option.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Counselor. Other questions from the committee? What's the pleasure of the committee?
I'll move to approve.
Second.
Motion is second to approve this agenda or this budget. Can we get a roll call?
Counselor Villarreal,
Yes.
Rivera,
Yes.
Counselor Lindell,
Yes.
and Counselor Romero Worth.
Yes. Okay, we are on to the internal audit office. Who
Yes.
is presenting this? Is that you, Mary?
Madam Chair, in the interest of time, I'll go ahead and run through the next 3 slides. As was indicated earlier, the internal audit function does fall under the management of the city manager in our ordinances. That budget is flat. The proposed budget is flat, 159,000, 150,000 for contractual services and 9,000 for other operating costs. Moving on to, well, let me pause there if there are any questions on the internal audit budget. Just as a reminder, this function has been outsourced after the McCard report. That was a recommendation of the McCard firm to outsource this function. The city has engaged with a firm named REDW to perform the internal audit functions. Those internal audit functions have covered, or assessments have covered, anything from procurement to leases to police evidence room most recently. And the team at REDW, I believe, is wrapping up the risk assessment, the current year risk assessment, to then determine the game plan on how to utilize this 150,000 with their recommendations on which assessments to do in the future. This is these internal audits are presented to the audit committee as well as to the finance committee upon completion by this outsourced function. With that, Madam Chair, I'll stand for any questions on this.
Great. Questions from the committee on the internal audit?
For approval of the internal audit budget.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second to approve the internal audit budget. Can we get a roll call, please?
Counselor Villarreal,
Yes.
Counselor Rivera,
Yes.
Counselor Lindell,
Yes.
and Counselor Romero Worth.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. Director McCoy, on to the city council budget.
Onto the city council budget. Thank you, Mr. Flitch. Thank you. The city council's budget that is before you today represents a total of a little over 600,000. The investments in the city council's budget has actually increased by about 54% when compared to the pre-pandemic levels of FY19. The city council's recommended budget for FY23 actually increased by about 90,000. The recommended budget does include an increase to $15,000 per counselor for expenses related to office supplies, operating supplies, food, travel, printing expenses, and any type of dues related to memberships for the legislative roles that the council holds. That being said, as you can see, those particular expenditures in the prior years through COVID had been pretty low. As you recall, there wasn't much traveling going on during that time. So we have increased that to allow for additional expenses in any of these categories in supplies and other operating costs. We did solicit some feedback from the council as well. Ms. Lodetto reached out and received several requests and from different councilors on how they would like to spend this money, this additional funding. With that, Madam Chair, I will stand for questions.
Great. And if you can stop sharing screen, it looks like we do have questions. Councilwoman Villarreal.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a couple clarifying questions. So it says our budget increased by 54%, but I was trying to figure out what accounted for that because we don't have any salary increases. And if you look at the salaries and benefits line from back in pre-pandemic, it was higher and it's actually gone down. So can you explain two things? One, why our salary benefits have gone down when we have a fixed salary? And I'm assuming it might be benefit changes, but I'm not sure if that's it. And why it says we've increased 54% when our salaries are fixed. And the only thing that changed was that amount for expenses or office supplies, etc.
Madam Chair, councilors, those are great questions. The year that we are comparing to pre-pandemic levels is FY19. That is actually not included in the table that's on this sheet, but really that because we only carry 2 years of actual expenditures plus the prior mid-year budget. That being said, we did find it useful to compare all departments in these presentations and in the budget book to the full pre-pandemic year of FY19. So you'll see that throughout each of the presentations. We wanted to call that out specifically because we have reached our pre-pandemic levels in expenses and revenue. The city council's budget, for any changes in the city council's budget related to salaries and benefits are determined by our city code and a state statute. So you are correct, there are no salary increases, I believe last year or this year for city councilors. However, any changes to that category of salaries, wages, and benefits, not to go into specifics about each employee in that particular category, but would be caused by changes in benefits. Increase in health insurance, decrease in health insurance, that type of change. For the year, the change between FY22 and FY23, salaries, wages, and benefits actually increased by about 2% for the city council's budget. Madam Chair, councilors, did I answer all of your questions?
I'm just still perplexed by the 54% increase because I don't ever remember us having any kind of increase since FY19.
Madam Chair, councilor, yes, that was the full pre-pandemic year. Expenses in that particular year, I see Ms. Lodetto has her hand up. She wants to elaborate on what some of the expenses were in that particular year, potentially related to travel and training and other operating supplies.
Thank you, Director McCory, Madam Chair, Councilor Villarreal. There's one of the projects Mr. Fletch actually worked on last year was we established the correct rates for our workers' comp rates. We hadn't done that in several years, and that was, although it's not a large number, it's a big jump for this budget. It went from about $500 to almost $7,000. It was just corrected. It's, like I said, it's generally a small amount. The other real changes are really around travel and some of the monies we added in for the individual counselors. And we're going to, the methodology we used will be the same as we did last year. We'll create a project ledger code, and the way we assign $15,000 per counselor. So you'll be able to track how much of your piece of your budget you're actually spending or you have available to use. I hope that answers your questions around the budget.
So the workers' comp rates were corrected and that accounted for the increase. And then this current travel increase.
It's things like, I'm sorry, Counselor.
I was trying to remember I don't think we've ever had a $60,000 budget, even pre-pandemic. I don't know if Councilor Lindell remembers or Councilor Rivera. I don't think we've ever had that. So that's why I'm like 54%. How is that possible?
Madam Chair, Councilor Villarreal, I think what happened this year is this was the first time since I've been with the city, which I'll grant you is not that long, where we had set aside money for each counselor. And this year, based on some of the requests we got, we bumped that up a little bit. I believe last year it was somewhere around $8,000 and we bumped it up to 15. Because now that, when we were budgeting last year, we were still unsure about COVID. And now with things opening up, there's more travel being requested, training available, events that some counselors want to host. So things like that. We wanted to make sure that there was the funding available for those needs.
Yeah, the increase was actually, we got 2,500 last year. And then we went to, now it's 15,000. So, interesante. I guess that's it. I don't quite understand the major increase since we haven't really changed much, but even with this new supply budget, but I'll yield the floor for now.
Madam Chair, I can also answer, since the pre-pandemic levels in FY19, as I mentioned, there's other factors at play for salary increases for counselors, and that did happen within the last, since FY19. So that's why we've seen an increase in the salaries, benefits, and wages since that pre-pandemic year as well. And then there have been increases.
But that's gone down. The salaries and increase. You said increase in salaries?
Since FY19. Yes, that is correct.
Okay, we also have Brad's hand up. Brad, were you weighing in on this?
Madam Chair, I just wanted to clarify the workers' comp issue. The counselors were carried as clerical workers, but per workers' comp rules, they need to be classified as general government employees. The rate from a clerical worker is 19 cents per $100 of payroll. A general clerical or a general municipal government worker is $2.24 per $100 of payroll. And that explains the increase in workers' comp. Thank you.
That's helpful. Thank you. Other questions from the committee?
Madam Chair.
Yes, Councilor Rivera.
Did I hear Ms. Lotero say that with this increase to council or for council expenses that we could use it to host community events, neighborhood meetings, things like that?
Madam Chair, Councilor Rivera, I would defer to what the allowable uses are, but within the requests and what we can budget within the object codes, we budgeted some food and other things like that to allow you to do that. As far as the specifics, I would defer to the city attorney for that question.
City Attorney McSherry, you there? And I guess the thing I would ask is, like, could it also be used for things like room rental or, microphones or that kind of thing so that you could actually do a town hall?
Chairwoman Romero-Worth, I'm not sure. I think I'm hearing that the question is about whether or not funds in the council budget could be used for community meetings. Is that the question?
Yep.
Yes.
I see no reason why not. But really it would just be if they're in the right category, but probably budget adjustments are just as possible for the council budget as anyone else's.
Thank you.
Councilwoman Villarreal.
And on that point, so usually if there is a meeting that we want to organize, it goes through community engagement or the community engagement department. So how do we figure that out? Those funds should be coming from their department to help us set up a meeting versus our own funds? Or is that shifted now with this new budget?
Madam Chair, Counselor, if I may, I think the city clerk would be the best to actually answer that question about the details of assisting the counselors and setting up that type of community engagement or outreach. But this 15,000 would be available for that if you so choose. And if not, if you would like to spend it on travel or operating supplies, notebooks, any type of IT computer equipment, travel training dues was another key area. If there's memberships in professional organizations as well, any type of expense in those general categories. We would be happy to review if there are requests that do come up in the middle of the year to be able to assist you with that request, whether it's booking travel or paying for a membership to a professional organization. So we're happy to assist throughout the fiscal year if you have any more specific questions.
Yeah, I think I just want to know as it relates to meetings that are also related to departments to be able to communicate certain things to the community, if that comes from our budget or if that comes from community engagement department. So maybe someone could just get that information for us so we know the difference.
We'll work on that.
Are you ready for a motion, Chair?
On this budget, I think so.
I'm going to make a motion to approve.
Second.
A motion and a second to approve this budget, city council budget. Can we get a roll call, please?
Counselor Vieira,
Yes.
Counselor Rivera,
Yes.
Counselor Lindell,
Yes.
and Counselor Romero Worth.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to go now to the mayor's budget, and then we're going to loop back around for action on the community engagement budget. Can we get, let's see, Director McCoy, are you doing that one as well?
Yes, I can run through this. It's a one slider, as John referenced earlier. All of these are. So just to review, the mayor's 23 recommended budget is a little under 500,000. The mayor's office has actually decreased by close to 90,000 or 15% since that pre-pandemic level in FY19 that we were discussing previously. The mayor's recommended budget increased by a little by 5,600 or 1.2%. And the recommended budget does include 20,000 in office and operating supplies, 10,000 in printing, 81,000 in dues. At the current time, there are 2 FTE that are supported out of this this division. The one salary is to support the mayor's salary, and the other is to support the executive assistant. That executive assistant is vacant at the moment. So that is, if we circle back to the very, very beginning of this particular presentation, to note the vacancy rate for this entire department. That's one of the contributing, as is the vacant deputy city manager. I think with that, Madam Chair, will stand for questions.
All right, questions on the mayor's budget? Councilwoman Villarreal.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just clarification under salaries, wages, benefits in the mayor's office. Is that just the mayor mayor's position, or are there other positions that fall under that?
Madam Chair, Counselor, it's the executive assistant and the mayor's salary.
Executive assistant? Is that what you said?
Yes.
Okay. And so the neighborhood position is under whose budget?
Madam Chair, Counselor, which position are you referring to?
The neighborhood, well, it has multiple names, so I'm just blanking on multiple, let's see, neighborhood engagement coordinator, senior advisor.
Madam Chair, that position is within the community engagement department.
Community engagement, okay. Community engagement, not city manager?
Madam Chair, Counselor, yes.
But the city manager's his supervisor.
Madam Chair, Councilor Villarreal, the duties of the person filling the role of the neighborhood engagement coordinator and senior advisor to the mayor are split. And so the city clerk oversees the neighborhood engagement portion of the person's portfolio, and I oversee the special advisor portion of the person's portfolio. So there are two advisors contributing, or two supervisors contributing to that staffer. Excuse me.
Thank you, that's all.
What's the pleasure of the committee on this budget? I'll make a motion to approve. Is there a second?
I'll second, but I had another question.
Okay, Councilor Rivera.
I was just wondering what, it says $81,000 in dues. Do we know what those dues are?
Madam Chair, Counselor Rivera, those dues are for professional organizations that the mayor is subscribes to. For example, I'm sorry, it's escaping the mayor's
U.S.
conference,
Mayors.
U.S. Conference of Mayors. Thank you.
I think that's the, Councilor Rivera, apologies. I think the predominant support we get is through the USCM. We pay a membership fee, and that gives us access to briefings from mayors all over the country, from the White House, access to policy papers that they've developed, and before COVID hit, occasional trips to USCM gatherings of mayors. The last one was in DC. I did not go because it was still high COVID time. So it's mostly a remote Zoom relationship with mayors and staffers from the US conference who do things like offer advice on what cities around the country are doing to deal with COVID or expand their services to low-income neighborhoods, or offer economic development strategies that we could learn from.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilwoman Villarreal.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I forgot to ask this earlier. So under operating costs for mayor's office, it's very high and it continues going up, but then our other operating costs, and there's 8 of us, that was just based on our expenses. So remind me what other operating costs include again?
Madam Chair, I'm going to ask our budget director to assist us with that explanation.
Madam Chair, Councilor, I apologize. Could you clarify the question a bit? I might kind of figured out there a little bit.
Oh, I was trying to remember what was under other operating costs, because for the city council, under operating costs, it's our kind of our expense costs and supplies, maybe? No, maybe not. Okay, it's just the same number. Can you remind us what other operating costs are and why they're so high for the mayor's office compared to the council?
Madam Chair, Councilor Villarreal, in the case of the mayor's office, the majority of that is for services of other departments. That is services provided by fleet and IT. They actually pay for both the mayor and the council costs in that area. I believe the majority of that is for communications costs for city issued tablets, mobile phones, and computers used by the mayor's office and the city councilors.
So why is that services of other departments so high for the mayor's office and not a similar amount for the city council, other operating costs?
Madam Chair, Councilor Villarreal, again, that is for the entire mayor and council division. So that includes both the mayor and the council.
Maybe to keep it clean, you all could separate it. Like, so council has that number just for your own purposes, because that seems misleading for the mayor's office when it's actually just 2 people versus 8.
Madam Chair, Councilor, the issue there, the reason it is set up that way is that technically under the city organization, the mayor and the mayor's office are considered a single division. Department charges are made on a division level. So it gets very complicated if we're trying to split out within a division charges for this piece versus that piece. It is already an extremely complicated to do those assessments, as I can attest, because I do them every year. In fact, I presented them. So if you want to, if you don't like the way they're done, I'm the person to yell at, I guess.
Well, whatever's easier, it's a little bit, doesn't seem accurate then. The budget doesn't seem accurate if all of our stuff is under the mayor's office versus the other operating costs being under the city council. I'm just making a note because then the budget is skewed. And then we're saying like the budget is decreased, but it actually isn't, because that amount, that 251,222 is part of us. Do you see what I mean? I know it's minor, but it does skew the budget.
I agree. It makes me look terrible.
Madam Chair,
shade
Councilor,
on the
we
mayor's
can go
office.
ahead and make sure it is accurately reflected going forward, also to reflect prior years as well. So there is a clean accounting when we come to this point in the process.
I'm just helping the mayor out because it looks like you have a bigger budget when you really don't.
I know, we want to correct that.
I thought Councilwoman Villarreal was coming to my defense there, and I
am. It's a higher budget, and
it's the cavalry showing up right here when I need them. Thank you.
Well, I'm just saying it's skewed. So if you all fix that, then I think the budget the total amount will be more accurate.
Thank you so much for that recommendation. Andy will definitely take that into consideration. Madam Chair.
And he's like, no, thank you, but I think it would help to just get the total budget.
That's great. Correct. We'll definitely be able to display and represent that accordingly in the future. Madam Chair, we stand for any other questions.
Yes, I was going to say, are there other questions? Are we ready to vote on the motion? I think we're ready.
I move to approve.
We've already got a motion and a second. We just need to vote.
Councilor Villarreal.
Yes.
Councilor Rivera.
Yes.
Councilor Lindell.
Yes.
Councilor Romero Worth.
Yes. Okay, it's a little bit after 4. We'll go back to the community engagement budget, and I think we need to postpone. And Councilor Lindell, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I'm going to make a motion to postpone the community engagement budget. Chair, do you want that to time certain?
Let's try for tomorrow.
I'll make a motion to postpone the community engagement budget until tomorrow, April 14th.
And hopefully we can get the information that the committee has requested on that budget, and we'll then see where we are at that point. All right. Is there a second? We're only
So
postponing till
does-
tomorrow.
So then does that then delay everything that we have scheduled for tomorrow?
We'll take it up at the end. We'll do everything else. I mean, we could postpone it indefinitely, or we could take it up whenever we want to. We could put it to the table and pull it up. I'm just trying to give some forewarning of, hey, let's get the information the committee needs to take action.
Madam Chair, would it be helpful for the day we actually have open?
If we can squeeze it in tomorrow, I'd rather do it then. But if we can't, if we run, and we don't have a meeting running up against the end of the budget hearing tomorrow. So if we go a little bit over, and those budgets don't look particularly complicated to me, but we'll just have to see. Maybe we'll need to push it again. We have a motion and a second to postpone until tomorrow the community engagement budget so that we can get the information that was requested by the committee. Is there further discussion?
Madam Chair, there was,
Yes.
I did want a reconsideration to think about those two positions as potentially one. So I don't know if that's on the table as information that we're seeking.
I guess you can request that.
Well, I did request it for consideration of the community engagement specialist and the volunteer coordinator as one position.
Okay, well, we can go back and have a conversation about that and hear why that would be a good idea or not a good idea as part of the conversation, the further conversation on that budget. Other discussion? Other direction? Can we get a roll call?
Counselor Vieira,
I don't know. I'm going to abstain. I think it's not clear for me what's happening.
okay. Counselor Rivera,
Yes.
Counselor Lindell,
Yes,
Counselor Romero Worth.
Yes. Okay, just to be clear, we have postponed the community engagement budget until tomorrow. There were a number of things I believe the committee wanted to see in order to make a decision on that budget. We will work on getting that information and some justification about the combining those two positions, Councilwoman Villarreal, that you flagged as maybe being unnecessary to have two, and we'll hear more about why or why not it makes sense to combine or leave as two. Councilor Lindell, your hand is up.
take a second look.
Your hand is down. All right. Thank you all. I think we've had some good conversations. We've started some good conversations. Clearly, there's more information that will help inform these conversations. We will try to work on that overnight. And we will see you all in less than an hour for the council meeting. And until that time,